Chapter 1872. Actually, that producer wanted to hook up with Hua Jin. However, Hua Jin has a strong backer. Even if he's eyeing him covetously, he doesn't have the guts to do it. Is Hua Jin so popular the moment he debuted? Mu Shi shook her head. Nope. She continued, Hua Jin only became popular in the past 2 years. Because he has a sugar daddy, his status naturally rose. Before this, he was a money boy. Xianxia was confused. What does a money boy mean? Mu Shi's lips twitched. You don't even know what a money boy means? I don't understand. The red light at the intersection lit up. Mu Shi stopped in her tracks and turned to look at her. Under the dim light, her expression seemed a little blurred. In ancient times, money boys were also known as male prostitutes. Now, you can think of them as male toys of some rich people. Xianxia was shocked. She suddenly recalled what Hua Jin had said to her. I entered this industry because I was sold by my father when I was very young. Could it be? His background wasn't a joke? It was real? While she was in a daze, Mu Shi continued to explain in her ear, Hua Jin used to be a famous male toy. In the beginning, he was a lowly man who accompanied customers in bars to drink. Later, he was bought by the boss of a management company and kept as a mistress for a few years. At that time, Hua Jin was not famous yet. Although he was young, he was handsome and youthful. Many bosses liked this type of man, so he was considered a hot commodity and had been booked by many sugar daddies. Later, the boss of the management company saw that he was handsome and had a good face shape, so he gave him a stage name and tried to promote him as an artist. Who would have thought that after acting in a period drama, it would become so popular? He had also leaped up the ranks and became a popular actor in period dramas. Later, he was taken over by an even more powerful sugar daddy. He's really depraved, Xianxia said in disgust. Mu Shi shook her head and sighed. Her. Sure, what you're saying is wrong. In this industry, there are many times when you can't do as you wish. It's not like being kept or being depraved. Sometimes, even if you're unwilling, you have no choice but to submit in this world where the strong preys on the weak. Who would be willing to sell their body? Hua Jin probably lived an inhuman life in those years. I heard that Hua Jin seemed to have tried to commit suicide in the past. He cut his wrists in the bathtub, but he was discovered in time and was saved. Xianxia was stunned. However, after this sugar daddy's daddy, it's been different. This sugar daddy is so powerful that he even secretly dealt with a few of the people who used to torture Hua Jin in the past. Got rid with him. Xianxia was doubtful about this word. What do you mean by a handle? Mu Shi cleared her throat and said, That's what it means. She made a throat-slitting motion, vivid and vivid. Xianxia's face turned pale. How did this happen? This industry was darker than she had imagined. Chapter 1873. Otherwise, why do you think the entire production team doesn't dare to go against Hua Jin? Hua Jin is so arrogant and overbearing. Have you seen anyone who dares to stand up for him? She shook her head. No one dares to except for you. That's why I'm very afraid of Hua Jin. When I first joined the production team, I didn't even dare to look him in the eye and practically avoided him. So what if she's beautiful? She's just like a poppy flower. Beautiful but deadly. After a pause, she continued. But now, my impression of him has changed. You don't know this, but when you're not on set, sometimes the people in the production team will gossip about you. If someone dares to say anything bad about you in front of Hua Jin, he'll stand up for you. With him protecting you, no one in the production team will dare to criticize you, even if they hate you to the core. Take Lin Ji's assistant for example. Do you think she'll dare to say anything about you? Xianxia fell silent. After sending her home, Mu Shi drove off. Before she left, she did not forget to remind her, Sure, I'll pick you up at 8 tomorrow morning. You must wake up on time. Xianxia waved her goodbye and dragged her tired body home. Just as she opened the door, she was greeted by the warm light of the living room. Mu Yaja was sitting on the sofa reading the newspaper. When he heard the movement at the entrance, he looked up and smiled faintly. You're back. Haven't you rested yet? She thought that he was already asleep. It was already so late. It was 1 in the morning, yet he was still waiting for her in the living room? Xianxia's heart warmed. She originally thought that she would be greeted by a dark room, but she did not expect to see him still waiting for her when she opened the door. "How can I sleep soundly if you don't come back?" Wuxia said as he gently patted the sofa. "Come here." His summons made her feel like a summoned beast. She did not know whether to laugh or cry. She closed the door, took off her coat, hung it on the hanger, and walked to the sofa. Just as she sat beside him, the man's strong arm wrapped around her waist and pulled her into his embrace. Before she could react, the man lowered his head and sealed her lips with a wolfish kiss. He tasted her beautiful breath. He had been thinking about this kiss for too long. He had been longing for the woman in his arms for so long. During this business trip for more than half a month, he missed her so much that he almost went crazy. After they arrived in Luo City, Jianghu and Lu Jinyu were busy hunting for women. They were tortured by him, so naturally, they were busy looking for women to fill their emptiness. Wuxia was immersed in his work, but he could still hold himself back from not seeing her for a few days. For more than half a month, he didn't even know how he had endured it. "Don't go on business trips. Don't leave me for so long." Wuxia hugged her tightly, unwilling to let go. Since they got off the plane, he missed her so much that he did not feel sleepy at all. If she did not come back, he would not feel at ease at all. Otherwise, why did they say that absence makes the heart grow fonder? Lovers in love, not to mention half a month, even if they were separated for 7 or 8 days, they would still miss each other so much that their souls would leave their bodies. Not to mention the long period of more than half a month. Xianxia missed him too. If it were not for the huge workload in the past half a month, she would not even know how to deal with this long night without him. Chapter 1874. He hugged her, and she hugged his waist in return, passionately responding to his demands. She even knew how to take the initiative to pry open his thin lips, entangling with his warm tongue, unable to part. She missed him too. She missed the warmth of his body. She missed the mesmerizing curve of his lips. Xianxia lingered on his lips. After a few flirtatious moments, she panted coquettishly and looked at his handsome and devilish face with her languid eyes. "Why are you back so late?" he said in a displeased tone, but his tone was full of indulgence and there was no hint of blame in it. Xianxia replied, "The filming took place very late and the weather was cold, so the progress was a little slower." "Stop filming." As he rubbed against her ear, his breath smelled like orchids as he whispered these words. This was not the first time he had said this. Filming had taken up too much of their time together. He felt very dissatisfied. Xianxia looked a little guilty. She cupped his face and comforted him. "Aren't I back now?" "You're back so late and you're still speaking in such a self-righteous tone?" Wuxia's tone was unfriendly. His hand suddenly reached under her clothes and through the thick cotton coat, he easily grasped her softness. He leaned close to her ear and said in a threatening and flirtatious tone, "Tell me, how should I punish you?" "Hey!" Xianxia was angry and amused at the same time. She pushed his shoulder and said, "I'm only back a little late. Do you want to punish me?" "Aha! I waited for you for 5 hours. Tell me, do you think you should be punished?" Wuxia's arrogant tone made the corners of her lips curl up even more. She hugged his shoulder and gave him a peck. She smiled sweetly and said, "My dear husband, is this compensation enough?" "Not enough." Xianxia kissed him again. "Then how about this?" "Not enough." "Then what is enough?" Wuxia sucked on her cheeks reluctantly and kissed her deeply. He persevered in exploring the sweetness between her lips. However, at this moment, only a gotcha sound could be heard. The bedroom door was opened. Wuxia was the first to react. He looked up and saw Yu in his pajamas suddenly appearing at the end of the corridor. He looked at the intimate scene in the living room and was tongue-tied for a moment. There was a look of uneasiness on his little face. He stood there uneasily and wanted to retreat silently. However, when he saw Wuxia's gaze on him, he could not move his feet for a moment. Ugh! D****. Yu helplessly covered his face. He was clearly speechless. What a coincidence, he actually caught his daddy and mommy being lovey-dovey again. How awkward! And this was not to mention, it to God Tao, is it telepathy? As long as daddy and mommy were being intimate, he would always appear coincidentally. He to Momo, you to mommy, and daddy to mommy. To mommy to mommy to mommy to mommy and mommy, and to mom to YY to daddy and daddy to mommy and momly to mommy and to momus. Would daddy think that it was premeditated? To daddy on purpose? He was innocent. He was not going to take the blame. Yu Yu could not hide the awkwardness on his face. Xianxia turned her gaze and saw Yu Yu standing there looking tired and embarrassed. She immediately wanted to get up and push Wuxia away. However, the next second, Wuxia pulled her into his arms domineeringly. Chapter 1875. Yu Yu cleared his throat and pretended to rub his sleepy eyes innocently. He said righteously, "I'm thirsty, so I want to get some hot water to drink." Drinking hot tea is a good habit. Approved. Wuxia said calmly. Yu Yu said politely, "Thank you, father, for your permission." Xianxia was speechless. Wuxia looked at him meaningfully and said, "After you've poured the hot water, drink it and go to sleep. Do you understand?" Yu Yu exchanged glances with him. The father and son looked at each other with tacit understanding. One of them was using his eyes to say, "I'm busy with your mommy." The other was using his eyes to reply, "I understand. I'll avoid it." Yu Yu nodded and smiled knowingly. "Got it." Then, without looking sideways, he rushed into the kitchen. Within half a minute, Yu Yu returned with a cup of hot tea and walked into the bedroom without looking away. Xianxia was dumbfounded. Wuxia kissed her as a form of consolation. "Let's continue." Just as he said that, they heard a cough. The two of them turned around and saw Yu Yu's little head popping out from behind the wall. Then, he reminded them kindly, "It's cold at night. Daddy and Mommy should rest early too. Remember to strike a balance between work and rest." With that, he turned around and ran back into the room, slamming the door shut. Wuxia was speechless. Xianxia was speechless. This little clown. Wuxia smiled, but he was annoyed in his heart. Then, he carried Xianxia in his arms and strode into the bedroom. After entering the room, the man's ambition seemed to need no more concealment. He held her in his arms and led her small hand to his waist. Xianxia's face burned the moment she touched it. The man's urgency made it clear that he no longer had any patience. He was no longer willing to exchange pleasantries and wanted to get straight to the point. She wanted to dodge, but he was too strong and refused to let go of her hand. That place was already eyeing her covetously, causing her face to blush even more and her heart to beat faster. It was as if she had been dyed with top-grade rouge, causing her to be charming and moving. "What? You should like it very much." In his passion, the man bit her earlobe and said extremely heart-stopping words. Her face grew redder and redder and she said shyly, "You, don't talk nonsense." "Isn't it?" The man smiled evilly. The more shy she was, the more he wanted to take possession of her beauty. So, he threw her on the bed, the tip of their noses touching, while pecking her lips and skillfully unbuttoning her clothes. "Just now, you also showed an impatient look. Why are you so reserved now? It's rare for you to take the initiative. I like it very much." His smile was devilishly charming. His originally cold lips, because of the lingering kiss with her, were slightly warm. When his lips touched her beautiful shoulders and neck, they left dark red marks. Looking at the seductive look in his eyes, Xianxia hummed for a long time, but she couldn't say anything decent. She really did desire him. Chapter 1876. He said that he liked it when she took the initiative. Recalling his excessively naughty flirting, Xianxia felt shy and uneasy at the same time, but the man saw it all. He grabbed her chin and wrapped his arms around her waist, forcing her to completely match his body. "Do you know? The more shy you are, the more I want to see you under me, that mesmerizing look." Xianxia was so embarrassed that she grabbed his collar and reached out to cover the mouth that kept spitting out words that made her feel at a loss. Wuxia. Why was this man so different from usual when it came to matters of the heart? Usually, he was dressed in a suit and looked elegant. He gave off a refined and courteous feeling, like an elegant king. And in this aspect, whenever he was in the middle of matters, he would always say things that made her blush. "Stop talking." "Okay, I won't talk. Let's do it directly." As he murmured, he directly covered her small mouth that wanted to say something. His scorching hot breath brushed against her cheeks and neck. Finally, he invaded her small mouth and tasted her sweet and enchanting breath. She was forced to float under him. His increasingly violent attacks made her feel like a small boat in the middle of a raging storm, bobbing up and down on the sea. "So sweet." He bit her earlobe and said wickedly, He grabbed her little hand that was resisting and attacked even more ferociously. The long night was beautiful and enchanting. In the midst of the man's indulgent panting, he finally vented all of it. He possessed her until she couldn't take it anymore. She cried and shouted that she didn't want it anymore. Then, he hugged her waist and was willing to stop. In the midst of it, there was a moment in his mind when he thought of just giving it to her. This little thing was really like a poison. Even so, he still couldn't control himself and fell into it, drinking poison to quench his thirst. After they finished, Xianxia nestled in his arms. She was so exhausted that she couldn't even lift her eyelids. If she moved a little, her waist would let out a tragic cry. It was as if she had just experienced a war. She felt that her whole body was about to fall apart. She was so useless. She had really worked hard to train herself, but she still couldn't handle the man's overly strong physical strength. He supported her body and lowered his head, taking in her beautiful and seductive posture. If this little thing was in ancient times, she would be a demoness that could bring disaster to the country. Even the most clear-headed monarch wouldn't be able to control himself in front of such a stunner. With such a stunner, how would he have the mood to worry about the state affairs? When he thought of it, he felt that he was a little like a fatuous monarch in ancient times who was obsessed with beauties. Wuxia smiled playfully and hugged her tightly, eliciting a soft gasp from her. "What's wrong?" "My waist is a little bit." "Why is it?" She laughed in exasperation. "You're still asking me?" "You're really..." the man murmured, but his hands were very gentle, and he began to knead for her. Xianxia dodged as if she had been electrocuted. "Hey, why are you like this?" "All right, I won't tease you anymore." Chapter 1877. Although he was not a professional, his technique was especially gentle. Under his kneading, Xianxia let out a comfortable moan and her body relaxed a lot. Wuxia was angry and amused at the same time. How could this woman be so delicate? However, the more delicate she was, the more he wanted to dote on her. After giving her a massage, he carried her to the shower room and cleaned up the two of them, who were sweating profusely from the shower. Feeling refreshed, he carried her into bed, turned on the heater, and fell asleep with her in his arms. It was a dreamless night until the sun rose. Wuxia called to wake her up. When Xianxia woke up, the sky outside the window was dark. In winter, the sun woke up later. At 7 o'clock, the sky had just turned bright. The weather in the morning was very cold. She struggled with herself for a long time before she was willing to get out of the warm bed. At this time, a certain man was still immersed in his sleep. He hugged her domineeringly. His strong arms were like a pair of shackles that were difficult to break free from. She was in a hurry to get out of bed and freshen up, but she also had to be careful not to wake him up. After a lot of effort, she finally freed herself from his arms. She changed her clothes and walked into the bathroom. After washing up, she was ready to go out. Just as she opened the door, the man was sensitively alerted. Xianxia turned around and saw that the man's eyes were slightly open. "Where are you going?" The man's extremely hoarse voice sounded softly. Xianxia chuckled and walked to the bed. She squatted down and gently covered his forehead. "Wifey is going to work. Darling, sleep a little more." "So early?" Wuxia was a little dissatisfied. He woke up from his sleepiness and covered the back of her hand. There was a dangerous look in his eyes. "Why are you going to work so early?" I have to rush for an event. My schedule is quite full today, so I might be a little late when I come back." Wuxia narrowed his eyes. Jianghu, that D*MN vampire. This little thing's body was so weak, yet he could not bear to torture her. Yet, he made her schedule so full? Courting death. "I heard that the movie you starred in did well at the box office." "Yes. That's why I received a lot of notices." He had already signed several contracts. Wuxia's gaze became increasingly dangerous. This Jianghu really deserved to die. Could it be that he turned a deaf ear to his words? Taking advantage of his absence, he arranged such a full schedule for his woman. Xianxia didn't know what he was thinking. After being affectionate with him for a while, she hurriedly went out. As soon as she left, Wuxia picked up his phone and called Jianghu. Jianghu had just woken up, too. As soon as the call connected, Wuxia's voice, which was laced with anger, came through. "You've arranged so many jobs for my woman, And she's always back in the middle of the night. Have you considered my feelings when you make her so busy? Qin Zhou woke up immediately. It was early in the morning, and the big boss was really full of resentment. Mu Yaja snorted coldly. It seems that you've turned a deaf ear to my words. I've already made the arrangements. Although Xianxia is busy now, I've already informed the crew that she can leave after filming. There's no need for her to stay on set. It was already 1 o'clock when she came back yesterday. Chapter 1878. His infuriating tone made it easy for a man without a family to speak without feeling any pain. Mu Yaja was even more displeased. I don't like it when she leaves early and returns late. It's so tiring. As for the rest, you can do as you deem fit. I'll see how you perform. Without giving him a chance to explain further, he hung up the call. Qin Zhou stared at the phone screen with his mouth agape. His whole person was in a mess. What is this? What a domineering CEO. He muttered and looked at the time. It was past 8 in the morning, which was indeed very early. The weather was still very cold at this time. No wonder this big boss was angry. His heart must be aching to see his wife rushing to work early in the morning. He sighed and held his forehead. It seemed that the schedule had to be adjusted again. Xianxia had 2 jobs in the morning, so she rushed through them like a flying person. She bitterly grabbed a lunchbox and flew to the TV station to participate in a program recording. On the way, there was a traffic jam on the Outer Ring Highway. Xianxia picked up her phone and prepared to watch the complete movie of The Green Apple. She did not have the chance to watch the movie after the post-production was completed, so she did not know how the overall effect of the movie was. Her assistant copied the movie to her phone, and while the traffic was busy, she watched it with relish. Romantic music, exquisite post-production rendering, thrilling plot, tear-jerking sadomasochistic love. Xianxia was engrossed in watching the video. She held the phone in her hands and was engrossed in it. It must be said that the effect was very different from what she had expected. Filming on the set was actually very boring. She had to read her lines and walk according to the script. She could not see her own expression at all, so the framework was rigid. In this aspect, Lin Fengtian was very strict. He had a good grasp of the movie, so in the script, be it her expression or lines, she had to act according to his design. She was almost like a worker, completing all the targets in an assembly line and completing the work. After filming, Xianxia's heart was pounding. When it came to acting, it was actually quite different from the movie. In the past, when she watched movies, she would always be so immersed in the touching scenes. Tears would immediately flow out of her eyes. However, when acting, no matter how heart-wrenching the scene was, it was very difficult for her to immerse herself in the feelings. Sad emotions needed to be repeatedly brewed. When she really could not squeeze out tears, she would shut herself in a quiet little dark room and constantly imagine sad things. With sad music, she could grasp that feeling and return to the set to continue. However, after excellent post-production, the movie was different. When the scene came out, it was clearly a joyous scene during the filming. But in the movie, when the bridge was played, coupled with the heart-wrenching BGM, sadness filled everyone's hearts. Especially at the end, Xianxia found it hard to control her sadness, and tears burst out of her eyes. When Mu Shi saw this, she did not know whether to laugh or cry. Xianxia, why are you so disappointing? How could she cry while watching her own movie? I really admire you. Xianxia said awkwardly, because it's very touching. Chapter 1879. Xianxia broke into a smile through her tears. Actually, I didn't notice it when I was acting, but when I watched it, after the post-production, this kind of sad emotion came out without any brewing. When other people watch their own movies, they laugh as they finish watching them. They even feel embarrassed after watching them. You, on the other hand, actually cried while watching it. Mu Shi changed the topic and praised sincerely. Xianxia, your acting is really good. Do you still remember? Before the movie was released, many people doubted you, humiliated you, and looked down on you. But now, you've proven yourself with your capabilities. Your acting is really good. Yin Xiaochuan's character has been vividly portrayed by you. Don't flatter me. I'm just speaking the truth. How can this be considered flattering? Mu Shi smiled and then focused her energy again. After a long traffic jam, Xianxia finally arrived at the TV station and was almost late. She was so scared that she broke out in cold sweat. The recording of this show was very important to Xianxia. Because it was the TV station's variety show with the highest viewership ratings, it was inevitable that other celebrities would be unhappy with Xianxia for being late and would say that she was acting like a big shot. Xianxia was supposed to participate in this episode's recording. However, due to certain reasons that could not be announced to the public, Xianxia could not participate. Helpless, the production team could only replace him at the last minute. This person was no stranger to Xianxia. Li Jiuxian. Seeing Li Jiuxian, Xianxia was suddenly reminded of the gossip she had told her yesterday. When she thought of how Li Jiuxian was willing to sleep with the producer for the male lead of Lethal Beauty, she felt that this man was really degrading. In the past, she thought that Li Jiuxian's looks were outstanding, his acting skills were not bad, and his temperament was gentle and elegant. She did not expect him to be so unrestrained in private. It was really hard to imagine. Xi's gossip really destroyed her worldview. What 9 dragons playing with pearls? What deep water bombs? The chaos in the industry had caused her to keep a distance from any celebrities. Hence, in the dressing room, the moment her assistant left, Xianxia heard the other senior staff gossiping about her. Sister Meng, the newcomers nowadays are all very arrogant. Look at him, he's just debuted and has only starred in 1 movie. He's already so arrogant. She's the Phoenix girl that director Lin personally appointed. She comes from a high family. How can she be the same as us? So what if you're Lady Phoenix? She just debuted and she's already so proud of being the female lead. It's obvious that she's looking down on us small C-listers. Haha. People who became popular overnight were indeed different. However, who knew how she got the role of the female lead? It's not easy to be the Phoenix girl. She just debuted and already has such good resources. After that, those people deliberately lowered their voices and whispered to each other. Xianxia couldn't hear them clearly. However, even if he didn't hear it clearly, it wasn't hard to imagine how unpleasant those words were. She couldn't be bothered. Chapter 1880. She did not even need to think to know who these people were talking about. She coldly snorted and sarcastically said, "Why, are you jealous of our Xianxia?" The few celebrities turned around and, upon seeing that it was her, sneered at one another. What? What has it got to do with you? It's a cat catching a mouse. Xianxia is our artist. If I don't care about you guys gossiping about her behind her back, who will? Crazy. Forget it. Sister Meng, ignore them. We've hit the nail on the head, so they're angry from embarrassment. She rolled her eyes, walked over, and slammed the teacup on the table with a loud bang. Her angry action shocked them all. What are you doing? You're jealous, aren't you? You're jealous that our Xianxia got the female lead role right after her debut, that our Xianxia proved her acting skills with her acting skills, and that our Xianxia's movie broke the 1 billion yuan box office, aren't you? I'd like to ask who you're trying to annoy with your sarcastic words. Aren't you guys just bullying our Xianxia for being good-tempered and letting you bully her? Haha. Let me tell you, Xianxia can act in director Lin's movie because she's capable. Wild chickens like you want to act in director Lin's movie and be the female lead? Do you even have the chance to cross that threshold? With your narrow horizons, don't embarrass yourselves here. The few celebrities could not take it anymore after being ridiculed by her. What are you doing? Are you a firecracker? You can go off at the slightest touch. Are you crazy? Are you trying to find trouble with us? Who's interested in finding trouble with has-been artists like you? She sneered. I just find you guys especially pitiful. Look at your faces. You're the typical example of sour grapes. You even said that our Xianxia is pretending to be pure and innocent, but why don't you take a look at yourselves? Going to Korea for plastic surgery is more like an assembly line product. Look at your hyaluronic acid faces. Do you think you can act it out? Don't think that you'll be famous just because you're in this industry now and have a sugar daddy. Acting still depends on your abilities. Her poisonous tongue was comparable to Qin Zhou's. His cunning and poisonous tongue made the faces of the few people turn white, making them feel embarrassed. One of the more experienced artistes suddenly jumped up from her seat and arrogantly walked in front of her. Her exquisitely painted face was like a Barbie doll, and a pair of eyes stared fiercely at her, as if she wanted to eat her up. Amazing. Even a small assistant nowadays is so rude. Who do you think you are? How dare you stand in front of us and criticize us? Are you looking for a beating? Her face was full of menace. Chapter 1881. For someone like you, it's better not to think about entering the entertainment industry. Instead, you should think about how to hook up with a rich and foolish sugar daddy and quickly pursue your dream of becoming a rich man. The artiste whom Wuxia was mocking was indeed a bar hostess. After obtaining a sugar daddy, she pestered her way into the entertainment industry and went for plastic surgery to get some resources. She had some fame, but she was only half famous. Even in this variety show, she was only invited by the production team to fill in the numbers. That person's face turned green and white, and she could not spit out a word. It must be said that where there were women, there would be war. Moreover, the entertainment industry was a place where beauties gathered. If one had to use a word to describe it, it was similar to the imperial palace in ancient times. Many artistes were like concubines in the harem. Those who were beautiful would naturally have a bright future. Those who were not beautiful would grit their teeth and go for plastic surgery to see if they were fated to be famous or not. Take this person, who was called Sister Meng by the younger generation, for example. She had an angelic face, but she was not fated to be famous at all. She acted in a few shows, but they were neither hot nor cold. Those who had a bleak future were like those concubines who had fallen out of favor in the harem. They were banished to the cold palace and disappeared without a trace. There were even some artistes who, although they were called celebrities, were nothing more than high-class prostitutes. They indulged in a life of luxury and forgot everything. Wuxia especially looked down on such people. Before entering the entertainment industry, she had always thought that celebrities were like male gods and goddesses. However, when she really entered the industry, she realized that, although they were glamorous on the surface, they were actually foul in private. This person called Sister Meng was so angry that she could not speak for a moment. Wuxia continued to mock her. Envious of our Xianxia, what's the use of being jealous? If you're indignant, why don't you do it too? If you're so capable, come out with a movie that breaks 1 billion yuan at the box office. Let's see you in a different light. B*TCH. Shut up. The heated argument alerted Xianxia and at the same time, the show's producer. The producer walked over. When he saw Wuxia, he smiled at her. The production team used to have a deep relationship with Xianxia, so he was familiar with her and knew that she was a lady who did her job. He then looked at the ashen faces of the artistes and frowned. What are you doing? What's going on? Producer Li, it's like this. Wuxia explained to them what had happened earlier. Sister Meng panicked and opened her mouth to explain. Producer Li waved his hand and interrupted her. Backstage, there's so much media waiting for you, and you're still arguing? What? What a bad temper. Wu Mengjia, I'm warning you. If you still want to go on the show, shut your mouths. Otherwise, don't say that I didn't warn you if you don't perform well and get humiliated in front of the public. With that, the producer gave a few more instructions to Wuxia before turning around to get busy. Wu Mengjia was so angry that her chest heaved up and down violently. She had nowhere to vent her anger, so she said sarcastically, having a background is really different. Even the producer is taking such good care of you. Bitch. If you have the ability you should do the same. Wu Mengjia felt suffocated and uncomfortable all over. She glared at her fiercely and left the dressing room in her high heels. A few of his followers immediately chased after him. Chapter 1882. Xianxia was dumbfounded at the sight. Seeing her dazed expression, Wuxia asked in confusion, Xianxia, what's wrong? Why do you have such an expression? You're so strong. I didn't expect you to have such a sharp tongue. She stuck out her tongue, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. What? I've been with Jianghu for so long, so I naturally have to practice my glib tongue. Thank you for defending me, but there's no need to be calculative with these people. Sure, you. It's not that I'm being hypocritical, but you'll never know the consequences of angering these people. You're well-mannered, but they're brainless. Can you be calculative with them? Wuxia did not fully understand. You're just an assistant. To be honest, in this society, the strong preys on the weak. The fact that they can become famous means that they have some power behind them. If you really go head-on with them, you might end up hurting yourself. She understood that Xianxia was saying this out of concern for her. Indeed, she had lost her rationality because she was too angry earlier. Just thinking about it made her shudder. These artistes financiers were quite powerful. If she went back and filed a complaint, she did not know how they would deal with her behind her back. She was different from them. She didn't have a strong backing. She smiled guiltily. I'm sorry, Xianxia. I wasn't rational enough. Thank you for your concern. She was especially grateful for Xianxia's kind reminder. It's fine, but don't worry. Xianxia changed the topic and smiled evilly. In the future, just leave such people to me. Since they said that she used underhanded means to climb up the ranks, she might as well let them see what kind of underhanded means she had. Those words just now had angered her. However, due to her etiquette, she did not show her displeasure on her face. When she returned to the dressing table, she received a new message on her phone. Wuxia. When will it end? Xianxia replied. Filming ends at 4 p.m. Half a minute later, a reply came. Which TV station? I'll pick you up. It was just a simple sentence, but it was filled with love and sweetness. Xianxia smiled and replied briskly, Yasin TV station. Generally speaking, a variety show's broadcast duration was only around 90 minutes, but in reality, the recording process was extremely long. After the 4-hour-long recording ended, Wuxia had already rushed to the underground parking lot and was waiting quietly. Xianxia appeared on time. After getting into the car, she hugged his shoulder and planted a kiss on his cheek. Hubby, you've worked hard. It was a warm nickname, but it was Wuxia. His thin lips couldn't help but curve into a doting arc. Are you hungry? He asked gently as he gazed at her face with watery eyes. Xianxia rubbed her deflated tummy and grumbled, Of course, I'm hungry. I just ate a little for lunch. What did you eat? Lunch. Xianxia had an indescribable look of resentment on her face. I took a few bites and rushed to the next trip. Why are you in such a hurry? You have to eat your fill for lunch. Because I'm afraid that I won't be able to make it in time for the recording. If you can't make it in time, let them wait. In the future, you're not allowed to work without a full meal. It's easy to get stomach problems from hunger. Such a domineering tone was his usual style. Xianxia didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Chapter 1883. Wuxia rubbed her fringe lovingly and tucked a strand of hair that had fallen to the corner of her eyes behind her ear. Where do you want to eat tonight? Xianxia licked her pink lips and suddenly suggested, Why don't we go for Western food? I suddenly feel like eating fried steak. The car slowly drove out of the parking lot. At the exit, Wuxia drove so fast that he almost collided with a speeding Mercedes-Benz. The car braked and steadied itself. Xianxia was shocked. She saw that the car was about to collide with the car. Fortunately, Wuxia controlled the car well. Coupled with the car's high performance, he managed to stop the car in time. A woman alighted from the Mercedes-Benz. Xianxia took a closer look and her face suddenly turned cold. What was the saying again? Enemies were bound to meet on a narrow road. The person alighting from the car was Wuxia, who had a fierce argument with Wuxia in the dressing room. The moment she alighted, she nervously walked to the front of the car to take a look. Thinking that they had collided, she heaved a sigh of relief when she saw that there was no sound. She was scared. This Mercedes-Benz was an imported sports car. Every time a layer of paint was chipped, they would have to import parts from abroad to repair the car. It was very expensive. Thinking of this, Wuxia felt a lingering fear in her heart. She stormed up to Wuxia's car and angrily knocked on the window. Do you have F***king eyes? Do you know how to drive? Why are you driving so fast? Are you rushing to be reincarnated? Xianxia's face turned colder. This Wuxia was reserved and humble in the show. When she smiled, she was as elegant and noble as a goddess. She was beautiful and moving. She did not expect that she would be so shrewish and uncultured when off camera. It turned out that one could not judge a person by their appearance. She looked bright and beautiful, but who knew what kind of disgusting person she was in private? Wuxia lowered the window expressionlessly and turned to look at her coldly. Wuxia was stunned when she saw him. What a handsome man! Is he a celebrity idol? But she had been in the industry for so long, and she had never seen such a handsome person. His deep eyes, exquisite facial features, and handsome silhouette made him look like a god. When people see beautiful things, they will always be fascinated. However, when she saw Xianxia sitting in the front passenger seat the next second, she was even more surprised. "Why are you here?" Xianxia asked coldly. "Why can't it be me?" "You?" Wu Mengjie looked at Mu Yaja and then looked at Xianxia. For a moment, she was a little confused. Her gaze suddenly fell on Mu Yaja and Xianxia's tightly intertwined fingers. Even though the two of them were sitting in the car, they were still tightly holding hands. It was obvious that the two of them were very close. Could it be? Who is he? Wu Mengjie narrowed her eyes, eager to explore the relationship between this handsome man and her. Xianxia suddenly smiled deeply and said, "Didn't you say that I was able to become famous because I had a sugar daddy behind me?" As she said this, she glanced at Mu Yaja and smiled lightly. She said generously, "This is the sugar daddy you were talking about." Sugar daddy. When Mu Yaja heard this, his gaze turned cold and sharp in an instant. When Wu Mengjie heard this, her mind went boom, and instantly exploded. What? This ridiculously handsome man was actually her sugar daddy. How was that possible? But looking at the intimacy between the two of them. Chapter 1884. If what Xianxia said was true, then it was really enviable. The sugar daddy behind her was so outstanding, rich, and handsome. Compared to her previous sugar daddies, they ranged from their 30s to their 50s. There were even old men who were old enough to be her grandfather. They were either balding, or had big bellies. Whenever she thought of that fat body pressing down on her and pleasuring her tactfully, she resisted the urge to vomit. Wu Mengjie was so jealous that her eyes were about to bleed. "I knew it. For you to have such good resources, you must have a sugar daddy supporting you. However, Xianxia, you're so lucky to have such a sugar daddy supporting you. I'm so envious of you." After a pause, she suddenly flipped her long black hair charmingly. With one hand on her slender waist, she gently placed her hand on the car window. "Sir, it's really bad of you to have taken a fancy to such a woman. Why don't you kick her away and I'll do something to you?" As she spoke, she winked at him in what she thought was a flirtatious manner. She lowered her voice and said, "I'm really good in bed." He frowned. "Dirty." Wu Mengjie was stunned. "Ah, what did you say?" Mu Yaja ordered expressionlessly, "Take your dirty hand away." After that, without waiting for her to react, he pressed a button to roll up the car window. Wu Mengjie was caught off guard, and her hand was caught by the car window. She yelped in pain. Mu Yaja stepped on the accelerator, and the car sped away, almost brushing against her body. She was hit hard by the speeding car, and she fell to the ground with a face full of mud. Wu Mengjie stood up and stomped her high heels angrily. What kind of person is he? He's blind to have taken a fancy to that kind of white lotus. As she said that, she still felt that it was a pity. If she could have such a handsome sugar daddy, she would wake up laughing in her dreams. Who was that woman just now? After the car drove out of the car park, Mu Yaja asked plainly. "A C-list celebrity." Xianxia glanced at him and suddenly said half-jokingly, "My husband is so charming. Someone actually dares to openly seduce you in front of me. Tell me, should I be angry? She can't compare to you, not even a hair on your head." Mu Yaja obviously didn't like her joke. He pinched her hand so hard that it hurt. "Hey, you can't take revenge on me like this." Xianxia protested softly. "Did she bully you? If she bullies me, are you going to stand up for me?" Xianxia said with a smile. Mu Yaja frowned, but he didn't seem to be joking with her. "Answer me, did she bully you?" "Hubby, you're so stupid. It's obvious that your wife is being bullied outside. She scolded me for a long time in the makeup room. I don't like her." After a pause, she said aggrievedly, "She's also an artist under Huanyu. Hubby, your wife is being bullied outside. Are you going to stand up for me?" Mu Yaja was speechless when he heard that. As the lady boss of Huanyu, you're actually being bullied outside by an artist under your management. What should I say about you? Xianxia was silent. Since when was she the lady boss of Huanyu? Ah, that's right. Her husband was the big boss behind Huanyu. In that case, wouldn't she be the lady boss of Huanyu? == Chapter 1885. Xianxia poked her fingers in embarrassment. Mu Yaja caressed her lowered head and snorted. She doesn't have eyes. I'll issue a blacklist order tomorrow to freeze her. Xianxia was amused by his protective attitude. She clapped her hands and cheered. Hubby is mighty. How shameless. Xianxia suddenly clenched her fists and said, Don't wait until tomorrow, let's do it tonight. I didn't want to be calculative with her, but this B*TCH actually seduced my hubby right in front of me. I can't take it until tomorrow. Mu Yaja. He suddenly smiled. All right, I'll blacklist her tonight. Even he himself didn't realize how much he indulged and doted on this little woman. Hubby is the best. All right, don't be unhappy. Let's go for dinner now. Okay. Xianxia nodded in joy. Her phone suddenly rang at this moment. She picked it up and glanced at the screen. It was a call from her father. When the call connected, she heard Xianxia's uneasy voice from the other end. Xia, where are you now? Are you busy? Dad, I'm about to go for dinner. I just finished work. Come to the police station on Shifeng Road now. His voice was extremely hoarse. Usually, when he heard that she had just finished work, he would ask about her well-being. No matter how important the matter was, he would ask her to have dinner first. However, today's Xianxia's tone was extremely urgent. Xianxia was stunned. Police station? Dad, what happened? I don't know what's going on either. I just received a summons from the police station and just arrived. Come over right now. Okay. After hanging up, Mu Yaja seemed to have detected something unusual about this call. He asked curiously, What's wrong? Dad wants me to go to the police station now. It seems to be something important. Police station? Mu Yaja frowned in surprise. Where is the police station? Shifeng Road. All right. Mu Yaja turned the car around and sped towards Shifeng Road. By the time they reached the police station, Xianxia was already sitting on the bench. He was fidgeting uneasily as he rubbed his palms together. It was apparent that he was at a loss as to what to do. Xianxia walked over, put her hand on his shoulder, and asked with concern, Dad, what's wrong? Xianxia raised his head and looked at her face. He wanted to say something but stopped himself. When he turned around, he saw Mu Yaja, who had parked his car, slowly walking in. Hello, uncle. Mu Yaja called out politely. Xianxia hurriedly nodded his head and curled his lips into a smile, but no matter how hard he tried, his expression remained ugly. Sure, the police station called me and said that there's a corpse they want me to identify. I was shocked when I heard it and thought that something had happened to you. When I rushed to the police station, I was told that the corpse had been dead for a long time. I don't know what's going on. Xianxia was stunned. A corpse? Yes. Xianxia nodded, his throat moving a little. I heard that a fisherman found it when he was out fishing. At that time, the corpse was already badly decomposed, so it was impossible to identify its face. Xianxia asked suspiciously, When did this happen? Chapter 1886. The body was salvaged half a month ago. However, because the decomposition was too serious, the autopsy report has been delayed and has not been released. Xianxia and Mu Yaja looked at each other suspiciously. Since there's no autopsy report, the identity shouldn't be confirmed yet. Has the DNA test been done? Xianxia shook his head blankly. We don't know yet. Then, how did the police contact us? Xianxia was even more suspicious. Since the identity of the body hasn't been confirmed, why did the police summon us to the station? Xianxia's lips suddenly trembled violently. His voice was hoarse and the fear in his eyes magnified. Because after the investigation, it might be someone from our family. Sure, you should know that your mom, Li Qin, hasn't she been missing for a few months? And Yun Na, we haven't heard from them in the past few months. I always thought that they had run away from home. This time, the police summoned us to identify the deceased's belongings and clothes to see if we can find anything. I'm on tenterhooks right now. They had been husband and wife for decades. Xianxia once hated Li Qin to the core, but it was impossible to say that he did not have any feelings for her. Previously, he and Li Qin had a huge quarrel and even proposed a divorce. Even if they were to get a divorce, she would still want half of the family assets. Xianxia hated her for being too mean to Shershur and being a bully, while Li Qin hated him for being biased toward Yun Shishir and not caring about his biological daughter. After the quarrel, something happened to Yun Na. After that, at the hospital, the mother-daughter pair seemed to have disappeared from the face of the earth. He had thought of calling the police, but on second thought, there was no bad news after being missing for so many days. They probably ran away from home. Thinking that dirty linen should not be aired in public, Yun Yeqing sighed. Husband and wife parted on good terms after all. Since Li Qin had left the house with Yun Na, then so be it. At least, he could have some peace. Hence, he did not make a fuss about it. At that time, he still harbored some hatred toward Li Qin. But this morning, the police suddenly called and asked them to identify a corpse. Yun Yeqing was baffled and puzzled. What corpse? The police officer asked. There are 2 missing persons in your family. One is your wife, Li Qin, and the other is your daughter, Yun Na. They've been missing for so long, why didn't you report them? Do you know where the 2 of them went? Yun Yeqing claimed that he had no idea. The officer laughed and gave a general account of the incident. He said that a fisherman had disturbed a highly decomposed corpse when he was out fishing. He heard that the corpse was salvaged from the waters of East Harbor. From the preliminary autopsy results, it was suspected that it was a homicide, so he was asked to identify the corpse. Furthermore, Yun Yeqing was also listed as a suspect because he did not report his wife and daughter missing for so many days. Yun Yeqing hurried to the police station. Due to an impromptu meeting, it had been delayed until now. He waited for an entire afternoon. Yun Shishir's face darkened when she heard this. Chapter 1887. That's unlikely, right? The more Yun Shishir listened, the more incredulous she felt. She shook her head and said, Mom and Yun Na have been missing for months. If they were killed, their bodies would have decomposed into white bones by now. How? I've mentioned this before too. However, the police said that the time of death hasn't been confirmed yet. Furthermore, the body was salvaged from the sea with heavy rocks tied to it. The body was also severely deformed due to the strong water pressure. Therefore, the initial suspicion is that the body sank thousands of meters underwater. Very few creatures can survive at such depths, and the body will take a year or even a few years to completely decompose. After a long period of time, the rope was immersed in the water and the body was slowly washed up by the sea. When it was salvaged, a third of the body was eaten by fishes. It was a horrible sight. Yun Shishir felt nauseous when she heard this. So, do we need to identify the body later? She asked. Yun Yeqing nodded solemnly. Yun Shishir sighed and sat down beside him. Mu Yaja glanced at the pale-faced Yun Yeqing and turned to pour him a cup of hot water. Uncle, drink some water. You don't look good. Yun Yeqing thanked him profusely, looking a little uneasy. Mu Yaja sat down beside him and patted his shoulder gently. Uncle, don't be nervous and don't think too much. Yun Yeqing shook his head helplessly. My mind is in a mess right now, so I'm not thinking too much. I'm just wondering who this body belongs to. Could it be Li Qin? Or Yun Na? Yun Yeqing's heart wrenched at the thought of this possibility. There was a saying that even a vicious tiger would not eat its cubs. No matter how disappointing Yun Na was, she was still his flesh and blood. No matter how much he hated her, it was an indescribable pain to see his child die before him. Yun Yeqing rubbed his hands and lowered his head without saying a word. He sat in his seat and appeared to be calm on the surface, but his heart was in turmoil. Memories of Yun Na's innocent and adorable childhood flashed through his mind, especially when she was just born. He held her in his arms, and that kind of tender love and pride. He prayed in his heart that the corpse that was retrieved was not his wife or Yun Na. Although they had done many foolish things in the past, they did not wish for the corpse to be any of them. How could Yun Shishir not have mixed feelings? She thought that they had gone missing because they had left home without saying goodbye. Who would have thought that his whereabouts were unknown, and that he might have died in a bizarre manner? Was it fished up from the sea? Yun Yeqing suddenly raised his head and asked tentatively, Shishir, do you hope that the corpse is? I don't. She knew he wanted to ask that. But her answer was that she didn't want to. Yun Yeqing nodded and smiled in relief. I thought you hated her. Dad, hate is hate. But I'm not so cruel as to kill someone just because I hate them. Mu Yaja raised his hand to look at his watch. It had been an hour since they arrived, but the police still hadn't come out to greet them. The excessive neglect made him a little unhappy. Thus, he dialed a number and walked to the side to give a few instructions. Not long after, the police chief rushed over, looking travel-worn. Chapter 1888. Chairman Mu. How do you do? Why are you here? I'm truly ashamed of my lack of hospitality. The old chief smiled and raised both hands, intending to shake hands with him. Mu Yaja stood at the same spot with his hands in his trousers. He glanced coldly at the pair of hands that the man had extended to him, but his face remained cold and detached. He had no intention of shaking hands with him. It was as if he was stingy with basic greetings when it came to the old man. The old bureau chief was stunned. His hot face was stuck to a cold butt, and his nose was covered in dust. He was a little embarrassed. He looked down at his hands and realized that his fingertips were stained with dust. He quickly wiped his hands on his clothes and smiled. Chairman Mu, I'm sorry for the neglect. Please don't take it to heart. Only then did Mu Yaja gently shake his hand. Even so, his fingers did not curl at all. It was just an empty grip for a moment before he retracted his hand. However, the old director was already very satisfied. He was happy to shake hands with the rumored cold and arrogant CEO of Dishing Financial Group in front of everyone. It was a great honor for him, and he was very satisfied. Mu Yaja was already giving him a lot of face. The old bureau chief had been in a meeting at the headquarters when he received a call from his superiors. He knew that a distinguished guest had appeared in the bureau under his jurisdiction. He immediately reported it to the headquarters and rushed back in a hurry without having time to continue the meeting. Chairman Mu, I'm really sorry. I was in a meeting at the headquarters earlier, so I didn't know you were coming. It's just that, Chairman Mu, is there anything I can help you with? The old chief asked cheerfully. Yun Yecheng, who was standing at the side, was frightened and surprised at the same time. More than that, he felt that the old chief was too snobbish. He stood at the side and asked a few questions, but the old chief ignored them all. Instead, he asked about Mu Yaja's well-being. It was obvious that he did not care about him at all. Mu Yaja interrupted the old chief's greetings. My father-in-law received a summons from the police station to come and identify the body. He has been waiting here for an entire afternoon, but no one has come to give him an explanation. Whether it's identifying the corpse or cooperating with the investigation, you haven't even gone through the normal procedures. How busy is your bureau? His words were calm and indifferent, but they were filled with judgment. Breaking out in a cold sweat, he stiffly turned around to look at Yun Yecheng, who was standing at the side. This ordinary-looking middle-aged man was actually the father-in-law of the Mu Group's chief executive. He suddenly felt as if an iron weight had fallen from the sky, causing him to feel dizzy and disoriented. Thus, the old chief immediately went up to Yun Yecheng. His face bloomed like a flower as he asked politely, My apologies. I'm sorry. Sorry to keep you waiting. I didn't expect him to be Chairman Mu's father-in-law. Haha. May I know your surname? My surname is Yun. How do you do, Chief? Yun Yecheng suppressed his displeasure and greeted the man politely. Excuse me, your bureau summoned me here. It said that a corpse was salvaged from the sea, and they need me to identify it. The old chief became serious at once when he said that. A corpse? Has it been filed? I just received a call from your bureau, so I rushed over immediately. I don't know anything about the progress of the case, so I'm very anxious. Chapter 1889. With that, the old police chief led him and Yun Shishir to the office. Mu Yaja followed behind. It was only when they entered the office that they realized that the police officers, whom Yun Yecheng had imagined to be busy, were sitting in the office, drinking tea and joking leisurely. When they saw the old police chief enter, they immediately stood up straight and regained their serious expressions. Hello, Chief. Mu Yaja glanced at the noisy office and frowned. It seems that your bureau is very busy. Busy drinking tea and chatting. The old police chief's face was full of embarrassment. He coughed, patted the table and said sternly, Is this your work attitude when I'm not in the bureau? Are all of you very free? Everyone was shocked and lowered their heads guiltily. They were so scared that they did not even dare to breathe loudly. In front of Mu Yaja, the old police chief pretended to reprimand this bunch of people. As for these people, which one of them did not know how to read people's expressions? From the old police chief's expression, They roughly knew that it was either a superior who had come to investigate or a distinguished guest. They were very cooperative in putting on a show. This old gentleman received a summons from the bureau to come over to identify the body. Who's in charge of this case? Step forward. A young police officer stepped forward. Excuse me, are you Mr. Yun? Yun Yeching glanced at him and felt angry. He had been sitting on a bench outside the door for a long time, yet the person in charge of the case was laughing and joking inside. How could he not be angry? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I was busy just now and only had time to take a sip of tea. How about this? Come with me. I'll bring you to identify the victim's clothes and belongings. With that, Yun Yeching and Yun Shishir followed him into the morgue. Mu Yaja also wanted to follow. The old police chief immediately stopped him. Chairman Mu, please sit here for a while. I'll report to you if there's anything. Yun Shishir also said, wait for me here. Okay. I'll wait for you. Mu Yaja nodded. If you're hungry, you can go and have dinner first. Remember to call the two little guys and tell them that I may not have time to have dinner with them. Okay, don't worry. Yun Shishir nodded and followed him. The body was in the autopsy room. Because it was involved in a murder case, the body could not be brought back for burial. After entering the autopsy room and putting on masks and sterile gloves, the police officer led them to the display room. Opening the box, one of the bags was filled with personal belongings collected from the scene where the body was found, and the other bag was filled with the victim's clothes. Even though the clothes had been corroded by the seawater for a long time, causing them to fade and become tattered due to the impact of the current and the fishes, Yun Yeching could still recognize them at a glance. They were the clothes he had bought for Li Qin on her birthday at the mall. She was still wearing it that day at the hospital. Then, the mother and daughter disappeared without a trace. As soon as he saw that piece of clothing, there was a boom in his head. It's her! Yun Yeching was dumbfounded. His face was ashen as if it had been painted white. Chapter 1890. Yun Shishir was stunned for a moment. She barely recognized the clothes. They were the clothes that Li Qin had worn before. She wore a red jacket and was dressed in high-end fashion. Li Qin loved to dress up, so even though they were tight on money, she was always willing to splurge on her clothes. These were the clothes she wore in the summer. Judging from this, if this body really belonged to Li Qin, then she had already been killed in the summer. Could it be a coincidence? Yun Shishir was still in disbelief as she raised a guess. There are some personal belongings of the deceased here. Please come and identify them. The police officer placed the bag of belongings on the table and pointed. A watch, a black wallet, an earring, a gold ring, and a jade bracelet. Yun Shishir and Yun Yeching walked over. Yun Yeching stretched out his trembling hand and sorted out the items. He immediately took a deep breath of cold air. His eyes filled with heartache. It's her. It's my wife. Yun Yeching kept mumbling. He nodded and shook his head. Li Qin's sudden death made him feel a little lost and sad. How could such a good person be gone just like that? He really could not figure this out. The police officer shook his head and said, the autopsy report is not out yet, so we can't come to a conclusion, but one thing is for sure, she was murdered. Murdered? Yun Yeching turned pale with fright, somewhat in disbelief. She didn't have any feuds with anyone. Even if she did, it would be a conflict between neighbors. How could she be murdered? Her body was even dumped in the sea. I really can't figure it out. The police officer kept quiet and observed him silently. As Li Qin's husband, Yun Yeching was also a big suspect in her bizarre death. Therefore, as a suspect, the police officer began to observe him silently from the moment he spoke. Yun Yeching did not notice the police officer's careful scrutiny, and suddenly made a request. Can I take a look at her? The police officer replied, the body is in the autopsy room. It's not convenient for you to take a look at it now. Why? Because the autopsy is still in progress and the body is highly decomposed. Are you sure you want to take a look? Yun Yeching sighed. No matter what, we have to take one last look at the person who's gone. Yun Shishir also said, Officer, sorry to trouble you. My father wants to take one last look. The police officer nodded. On the way to the autopsy room, the police officer suddenly asked, Your name is Yun Shishir, right? Yun Shishir was surprised and asked, How do you know my name? First, during the investigation, We will be able to find out the details of your identity. Secondly, the green apple is very popular and has a good reputation. I watched it with my girlfriend a few days ago. Your performance was outstanding. My girlfriend was affected by the movie and cried her eyes out. I don't know how to comfort her. In this tense environment, he said something that was not related to the case to lighten his mood. This way, they could better observe the suspect. As a family member, Xianxia was also listed as one of the suspects. Even though the police officer knew that as a celebrity and a public figure, he wouldn't ruin his future with such a thing. Chapter 1891. Xianxia, on the other hand, could not calm herself down. She was not in the mood to exchange pleasantries with her and just brushed her off with a few perfunctory words. When they reached the autopsy room, the police officer took out his key and opened the door. The moment Xianxia and Xianxia stepped in, they smelled an extremely pungent smell of rotting corpses. There were a few tables in the autopsy room. On one of the tables was a corpse, but it did not look human at all. The corpse was highly decomposed. Moreover, after being soaked in seawater for a long time and being corroded, it looked like a giant. It was swollen beyond recognition, and its hair seemed to have fallen off. Its face had become extremely hideous. This was not considered disgusting. The most disgusting thing was that after being eaten by a school of fish, the flesh and blood had been separated, and the body was riddled with holes. A large portion of one of its arms had been cut off, and its legs were extremely twisted and crooked. The corpse's clothes were all removed. Because of the autopsy, the chest and stomach had been cut open, and the head had been cut open for samples to be tested. The decomposition was too severe. The smell of rotting corpses was different from that of ordinary creatures. This kind of stench was rather disgusting and nauseating. Amidst the extreme rancidity, there was also a hint of sourness. Xianxia held her breath, but she still could not resist the pungent smell. She stood hesitantly at the door. Even though she was wearing a thick mask, she could not resist the smell. She did not know if she would vomit in front of the police officer and Xianxia if she took a few more steps forward. The police officer kindly reminded her from the side, "If you find the smell very pungent, you can stay away." "Is the autopsy ongoing?" Xianxia asked while enduring the pungent smell. The police officer nodded. "The autopsy is ongoing, but please understand that the condition of the corpse is too. The few experienced forensic doctors we hired can't stand to face the corpse for a long time. Therefore, the autopsy process is very long and has been ongoing for more than half a month." Xianxia frowned. Indeed, one could imagine how serious the autopsy scene was. Xianxia calmed down for a moment and walked toward the autopsy table. Just as he took a few steps forward, he came in contact with a pungent smell of rotting flesh. Unable to bear it any longer, he turned around abruptly and felt a strong wave of nausea. "Mr. Yun, don't force yourself. This scene is really not something an ordinary person can bear." Xianxia waved his hand and walked to the side of the autopsy table. He lowered his head to look at the corpse and its ugly and hideous face. His heart ached, and tears fell from his eyes at once. It's too tragic. He had thought of countless outcomes, but he had never thought that it would be like this. No matter how unbearable Li Qin was, she was still his wife. They had been together for so many years, but one day, she appeared in such a pathetic state in front of him. "Li Qin, who did this to you?" Xianxia immediately went up to support him and consoled him. "Dad, don't be sad. She's already gone. How can it be gone just like that? And to die. Of all the things she shouldn't have done, she shouldn't have died such a miserable death." Tears streamed down Xianxia's face. Chapter 1892. Xianxia quickly agreed. Okay. When they reached the interrogation room, the police officer invited the couple in. After taking the documents, he sat down opposite them. Xianxia looked a little uneasy and asked, "I'd like to ask. Your question can be put aside for now. I have to go through the process first." Xianxia nodded in surprise. "Your wife is called Li Qin. She's 49 years old this year, right?" Xianxia nodded. "Yes. If she's still alive, she'll be celebrating her 50th birthday soon." "May I ask if your wife has any grudges with anyone before this?" Xianxia replied, "I don't think so. She rarely has any deep grudges with others. Although her character isn't good and she often quarrels with others, I've never heard of her having any deep grudges with anyone. How's your relationship with your neighbors? Yun Yecheng thought for a while. Not really. She's quite sharp-tongued and often quarrels with her neighbors. She's not on good terms with them. Didn't she do anything suspicious before she went missing? Yun Yecheng shook his head. Okay. If that's the case, may I ask? The police officer paused for a moment before probing, how's your relationship as husband and wife? Yun Yecheng sighed and answered truthfully, our relationship isn't very good, and we often quarrel with each other. She's a very crafty and unreasonable person. Plus, she's probably going through menopause. So, we're always arguing about trivial things. Did you get physical when you quarreled? Yun Yecheng smiled bitterly. Yes. She'll get physical when she's anxious, but I've never hit her. The police officer recorded this on the document and asked anxiously, in that case, your relationship as husband and wife is very bad. You can say that. The police officer asked again, where was the last time you saw her? And when? Yun Yecheng replied, I can't remember the time, but the last time I saw her was in the hospital with my daughter. Your daughter? Yes. At that time, my daughter was in the hospital. Something happened to my daughter and her face was disfigured. She wanted me to pay for her daughter's treatment. But at that time, I really didn't have any money, so because of this, we had a big fight and divorced. Later, when I returned to the hospital, the mother and daughter were gone. Mother and daughter? A sharp glint flashed in the police officer's eyes. Yes. My daughter, Yun Na, is also missing. We understand the situation. Your daughter and wife went missing at the same time. Yun Yecheng replied agitatedly, that's what I wanted to ask earlier. My daughter is missing too. But now, I don't even know where my daughter is, nor do I know what's going on. He was afraid that Yun Na had also met with misfortune. This time, Li Qin's body was salvaged from the sea, but there was still no news about Yun Na, who he cared about the most. The police officer asked a sharp question, since the person has been missing for so long, why didn't you call the police immediately? Yun Yecheng was stunned. The police officer questioned him suspiciously. Logically speaking, when your wife and daughter go missing, as a husband and father, you should be very anxious. Chapter 1893. Yun Yecheng shook his head and sighed again. At that time, I had a huge argument with her and it escalated to the point of a divorce. I had to leave the hospital because of something. When I came back, both mother and daughter were gone. I thought that she had left home because she was disheartened by the marriage, so I really didn't think of this possibility. If I had known, I would have called the police. Who would have thought that she would meet with an accident? The police officer nodded. After understanding the situation, he asked Yun Shishir a few more questions. After taking the statement and taking their fingerprints, Yun Shishir and Yun Yecheng left the interrogation room. Mu Yaja was outside the door, talking to Yu on the phone. Just as Yun Shishir walked out, Mu Yaja ended the call. How's the identification of the body? He asked. Yun Shishir shook her head with a grave expression. It's her. She was already very indifferent to Li Qin. To put it bluntly, she really did not feel much when she saw Li Qin's body, but she was still a little dazed. The impact of seeing a person who was originally alive appear in such a hideous state in front of her was indescribable. Hence, this was the only thing she felt. However, Yun Yecheng was different. After all, they had been husband and wife for decades. Being separated by life and death was still an indescribable pain. Yun Yecheng was in a daze from the blow. His mind was still a little muddled as Yun Shishir helped him to the bench. The old chief walked out and reported to Mu Yaja. Then he asked them to go home first, saying that he would inform them once there was any progress in the case. Yun Yecheng asked, can we take the body back? She's already gone and we want a proper burial. The old chief shook his head and said, I'm afraid not. Because it's involved in a murder case, I'm afraid we can't bury her before the autopsy report is done. As the case is being investigated, we need to investigate it at any time. Yun Yecheng's eyes were indescribably cold. All right. Then I'll wait for your news. When Yu received a call from Mu Yaja, he found out that a body suspected to be Li Qin's. He frowned and hung up the phone. He sat on the sofa, unable to calm down. He's dead? How did he die? Little Munchkin had completely forgotten that he had something to do with Li Qin's death. However, he had forgotten that Li Qin's death was his doing. It was only natural that he did not remember. Because at that time when he gave that order, his entire mental state appeared to be sick, almost as if he had gone mad. His purest personality had long disappeared, leaving only coldness. Yu himself did not know that his personality was very divided. In front of Xianxia, she was pure, kind, gentle, and beautiful. But when she turned around, she was cold and cruel. This was not because she was good at acting. Instead, it was a kind of personality distortion, dual personality. This was inseparable from his complicated childhood. He had been living in a dark world since he was a child. In addition, he was unwell and his family environment was terrible. On one side, he had Xianxia's meticulous care. She was gentle and meticulous. On the other side, Li Qin and Yun Na were viciously torturing and abusing them. It was inhumane torture and oppression. At the same time, in order to protect Xianxia, the kind-hearted Yu silently endured a lot. No matter how much he was wronged, he only cared about himself and endured it without saying a word. Chapter 1894. His personality was split into two extremes. On one hand, he was as dark as a devil. On the other hand, he was as pure as an angel. Therefore, once his personality split and turned dark, his methods were cruel and ruthless. It was not something a 7-year-old child should have. However, after he returned to normal, it was hard for him to remember what he had done. Therefore, Yu had forgotten what he had done to Li Qin and Yun Na. Xiao Yichen saw that he was frowning and felt uneasy. You don't look too good. What did Daddy say? He said that something happened, so he and Mommy might be a little late. He asked us to wait for him patiently. Xiao Yichen was nervous. What happened? Yu comforted him and said calmly, "Don't worry, you idiot. Daddy and Mommy are fine." However, Grandpa received a call from the police station today. They asked him to go to the police station to identify the body. Little Yichen was stunned when he heard this. A corpse? Yes. Whose body is it? Yu smiled coldly. When he mentioned Li Qin, his face was incomparably cold. He said casually, "Grandpa has a wife whom he has been married to for decades. Her name is Li Qin. She is Mommy's adoptive mother. According to seniority, I should call her Grandma. However, she is a bad person. She often bullies Mommy, so I don't want to call her Grandma." Pausing for a moment, he said slowly, "Some time ago, she and her daughter both disappeared without a trace. Less than a month ago, a fisherman fished up a body from the sea. It matched the woman's characteristics, so he asked Grandpa to identify it. Mommy is also with Grandpa. I'm afraid they are still cooperating with the police to record their statements." Xiao Yichen frowned and was a little speechless. They disappeared without a trace. How did they get fished up from the sea? It doesn't look like suicide. It looks more like a premeditated murder. What do you mean? Intuition. Xiao Yichen smiled. During his years in the special training camp, investigation was one of the most important subjects. Therefore, his consciousness and intuition were especially sharp. Yu was stunned. Xiao Yichen placed his hands behind his back and smiled at him. Then, he slowly said, "Apart from my intuition, if I were to calm down and analyze the situation, I wouldn't have gone through so much trouble to jump into the sea. Think about it, the capital's coastal theme is the estuary where the Longping River flows into the East China Sea. If it was suicide, then she would have to take a boat to the East China Sea to complete the condition of suicide. You have to know that there are only a few ports in the capital. The ports are tightly sealed, so I suspect that it was murder. I suspect foul play." Xiao Yichen's words instantly disrupted Yu's train of thought. It was as if many fragmented fragments had been squeezed into his mind. There were the sounds of women begging for mercy, crying and wailing, accompanied by thoughts that were surging like waves, rising and falling. His mind quickly fell into chaos. He fell onto the sofa in a daze and held his aching forehead. He fell into an inexplicable state of shock and uneasiness. Fragments of memories flashed before his eyes like a merry-go-round. Chapter 1895. Go ahead and cry. Your mommy isn't home now. Let's see who's going to help you. Let's see who's going to protect you. Isn't it too easy to just throw her into the pond? Chop them up and feed them to the sharks. Their deaths aren't worth pitying. I'll give you the money. You deal with the people. Do you understand? Agent Lee, give him the money. You, don't be blinded by hatred. It was as if a fountain had instantly gushed out from the depths of his memories. It was the scene of Yun Na crying as she knelt before him and ceaselessly begged for mercy. You, it's Auntie's fault. It's Auntie's fault. Auntie was blind in the past. It's Auntie's fault. Auntie swears that I won't bully you anymore. And I won't bully your mommy anymore. You, do you really want to kill us? I know that you're just scaring us. We were wrong. At the very least, for the sake of your grandfather, please let us live. Do you know? You're hiring someone to kill us. It's illegal. It's intolerable. Boo-hoo, you. I don't want to die. I beg you, spare me. Her sharp and piercing cries kept ringing in his ears, pounding on his eardrums. Yu clenched his fists tightly and sat on the sofa. His entire body was unbelievably stiff. Xiao Yichen saw that he was in a terrible state and couldn't help but touch his hand. When his fingertips touched it, he suddenly realized that he was covered in cold sweat. Yu? Xiao Yichen called his name, but the little guy didn't react immediately. Yu, what's wrong? Yu suddenly came back to his senses. His eyes widened as he looked at Xiao Yichen's face in shock. What's wrong? Why do you look so pale? When Yu came to her senses, she realized that her limbs were cold and her breathing was rapid. Her back, in particular, was drenched in cold sweat. I think I killed someone. He suddenly gripped his arm tightly, his brows furrowed. The memories of breaking through the seal of dust repeatedly stimulated him, reminding him that he had once given a very cruel order. Did you know? You're hiring a hitman. It was against the law. This was intolerable. Yu stood up abruptly from the sofa. The sudden movement startled little Li Chen, who was a little restless, and he quickly got up from the sofa as well. What did you just say? Xiao Yichen was a little confused. You said, you killed someone? I need to go out for something. As she spoke, Yu took out her phone and dialed Li Hanlin's number. Agent Li, come and pick me up. Yes, President Yun. Yu walked to the entryway, took a jacket, put it on, and was about to leave. Mu Yichen hurriedly chased after her. Yu, where are you going? Yu turned around and reminded her, be good and stay at home. If Daddy and Mommy ask about me when they come back, cover for me. After she finished speaking, she slammed the door shut, leaving Xiao Yichen standing there in a daze. Xiao Yichen was dumbfounded. Then she hugged her arms angrily and said angrily, What the hell? You left me alone at home and went out to fool around by yourself for no reason at all. I hate you the most. Chapter 1896. However, out of consideration for Yun Shishir's feelings, he did not reveal too much of his heartache. In the past, when the Yun family was still considered to be prosperous and respectable, the couple was very loving and respectful to each other. Perhaps because they did not have to worry about food and clothing, Li Qin was very obedient to Yun Yeqing. Therefore, even when Yun Yeqing wanted to adopt Yun Shishir, Li Qin did not stubbornly object. After a few arguments, she agreed to it. However, she was not her biological child, after all. Moreover, her original intention was to adopt a boy. Hence, her attitude toward Yun Shishir was very bad. Later, when the Yun family went bankrupt, Li Qin thought that she would have to live a life of hardship with Yun Yeqing after a few years of glory and wealth. There was a saying that went, poor couples have 100 sorrows. This saying was not wrong at all. When they were rich, they could easily buy a branded coat that cost tens of thousands. When they were poor, daily necessities like rice, oil, salt, soy sauce, vinegar, and tea became luxuries. After the bankruptcy, the family was at their wits' end. Li Qin was used to living a life of luxury. Now that the family was poor, she had to worry about trivial matters. Naturally, her temper became worse. The couple's relationship then deteriorated. Now, things were still the same, but the people were different. Yun Yeqing kept his head down and did not say a word, but how could Yun Shishir not know what he was worried about? Dad, don't think too much. Even if she's gone, don't let your imagination run wild. Sai, I'm just worried. I know you're worried about Yun Na's whereabouts. Xianxia frowned and covered the back of his hand. Don't worry. I'll definitely find Yun Na. Her mother is gone, and we don't know where she went. Could she have met with an accident too? That police officer just said that Li Qin was killed by someone, so where is Yun Na now? How can I be at ease now that we don't know whether she's dead or alive? Xiaxia's expression was grave. She was actually thinking that since Li Qin's body had been found, it was really hard to say whether Yun Na was dead or alive. She had a feeling that Yun Na had also met with an accident. Hence, she did not know how to comfort him when he let his imagination run wild. She could only tell him not to think too much. When they reached home, Xianxia realized that little Munchkin was gone. Xiao Yichen was sitting alone in the living room, watching television with his head propped up. Seeing that they had finally returned, she ran over and called out sweetly, "Daddy, Mommy, Grandpa!" "Yes. Where is Yu? Xianxia looked around but did not see Yu. Xiao Yichen scratched his head and replied slowly, Yu. He could not help but frown as he blamed Yu in his heart. This guy had left him here alone and left him with such a huge mess. How was he supposed to respond? Wuxia frowned. Where did that kid go? He seems to have been taken away by someone just now. By whom? I think it was Agent Li. Agent Li? Xianxia was obviously unfamiliar with this title. Wuxia reacted at once. Agent Li should be the principal of his former kindergarten. Xianxia nodded. She had met Yu once when he was in the hospital. That principal seemed to treat Yu as his own. She calmed down and gave Yu a call. The call was quickly connected. Chapter 1897. Yu replied, Mommy, I'm sorry. The principal said that he wants to treat me to dessert, so he won't do it again. It's already so late. Mommy will be worried. Okay. Yu coaxed her with a cheeky smile. Mommy, I'm not a child. Don't worry. After I finish the dessert, the principal will send me home safely. Xiaxia's lips twitched violently. She fell silent. A 7-year-old child said to her, I'm not a child. No matter how she heard it, it sounded strange. Okay, don't play tricks with me. If you don't want Mommy to worry, remember to come home early. Don't be playful. You have to be polite outside. I know. Mommy, don't worry. After hanging up the phone, Xianxia carried Xiao Yichen and asked gently, Baby, are you hungry? Mommy is late. As compensation, what do you want to eat? Mommy will make it for you. Xiao Yichen shuddered when he heard this. He said softly, Mommy, if you really want to make it up to me, you should take me out for a meal. Xiaxia's fragile heart received a heavy blow. Was her culinary skills that bad? She compromised. Then, what do you want to eat? Mommy will take you out to eat. I don't mind. Mommy, why don't you ask for Grandpa's opinion? Xiao Yichen will eat whatever Grandpa wants to eat. The little guy's thoughtfulness made Xianxia smile knowingly. The gloominess that had accumulated in his heart dissipated a lot. He took Xiao Yichen from Xiaxia's arms and could not help teasing him. Xiao Yichen is so sensible. If Grandpa eats cornbread, will Xiao Yichen eat it too? Of course. Whatever Grandpa wants to eat, Xiao Yichen will treat him. Xiao Yichen patted his waist bag and giggled. Xiao Yichen has a lot of money on him. Hee. Xianxia, on the other hand, was amused by his son's words. He caressed the boy's little head lovingly and could not bear to part with him. The atmosphere was joyous and harmonious. Yu sat in the front passenger seat and fiddled with the child's safety seat in disgust. She said mercilessly, Don't install this thing in the future. It's uncomfortable. Li Hanlin fell silent. Director Yun, as a child's seat is a must. Otherwise, if the traffic police stop me, I will be criticized and educated. Yu looked at the sky. Li Hanlin regained his composure and asked, Director Yun, what can I do for you this time? Yu pondered for a moment and said slowly, Today, the police summoned my grandfather and Mommy to the police station. They said that there is a corpse that needs to be identified. Hearing this, Li Hanlin was very sharp. He suddenly realized something, and his face suddenly darkened. Yu turned to look at him and said, Help me contact the police. I want to see the autopsy report. Which police station is it? Yu Yu shook his head. He did not know which police station it was. Since it was salvaged from the sea, the East Harbor branch should have a file on it. Don't alert the enemy. I have some connections in the police station. It shouldn't be difficult to get a copy of the autopsy report. As Li Hanlin spoke, he noticed that Yu Yu's face was shockingly pale. His gaze fell on his hands on his knees. Even his fingertips were trembling. It was obvious that he was extremely uneasy. Director Yun, what's wrong? Li Hanlin asked with concern and heartache. Agent Li, I'm scared. Chapter 1898. Yu Yu's shoulders curled up slightly. I think there's something dirty on my hands. I'm scared. I'm scared that if Mommy finds out about this, she'll hate me and be scared of me. He knew very well that he had only given the order and that he did not kill Li Qin and Yun Na with his own hands. However, Li Qin and Yun Na's deaths were caused by him. He was not afraid of killing. What he was afraid of was that once his hands were stained with sin, he would never be able to wash them clean. What he was afraid of was that he would become a sinful person, a person that his mommy feared and was disappointed in. Back then, the reason why he wanted to kill Yun Na and Li Qin was because he found out from Li Dongqiang that Yun Na had secretly framed his mommy. He was so angry that he wanted to send those two women who had committed the most heinous crimes to hell. However, when he came back to his senses and calmed down, he realized that he had been blinded by hatred at that time and had lost his rationality. He did not regret what he had done. In this world where the strong preyed on the weak, only by becoming stronger could he protect the people he loved. However, he was afraid. He was afraid that his mommy would hate him because of this. What would happen if his mommy found out? Paper could not wrap fire. He did not dare to imagine how disappointed and cold his mommy would be if she found out that he was the culprit behind this matter. In his mommy's world, she was so innocent and yearned for an ordinary and peaceful life. However, if she found out that her most beloved and obedient son had his hands stained with blood, Yu Yu was so shocked that he took a deep breath. Li Hanlin's heart ached as he held his hand tightly. President Yun, don't worry. I'll take care of this matter for you. He comforted him again and again, but Yu Yu still could not help but stiffen. His shoulders, especially, could not stop trembling. It was obvious that he was afraid from the bottom of his heart. Li Hanlin made a phone call on the way back. Then, he drove Yu Yu back to Laji Holdings headquarters. In the office, he poured Yu Yu a glass of Coke. Yu Yu suddenly looked up and held his arm tightly. Agent Li. Li Hanlin raised his eyebrows patiently and looked at him with a gentle smile. Please tell me. Have you killed anyone before? Li Hanlin frowned and fell silent. Yu Yu's bright and deep eyes looked at him quietly. His eyes were filled with complicated emotions, helplessness and curiosity. At this moment, Yu Yu had lost his usual composure and calmness. He looked at his father helplessly, like an innocent and naive child who had done something wrong. He felt extremely guilty. Li Hanlin smiled and shook his head. I've never killed anyone. Yu Yu's heart skipped a beat, and she felt even more uneasy. He suddenly asked in a low voice, Let me ask you, is killing someone an unforgivable evil? Yes. Li Hanlin blinked his eyes and said bluntly. Director Yun, according to the logic of ordinary people, no one has such supreme power, much less the right to take away anyone's life. Yu Yu fell silent. There's nothing wrong with that matter. You're the one at fault. What do you mean? Li Qin and Yun Na are greedy and insatiable. They hurt your family. To you, this is an unforgivable crime. They ended up like this because you're stronger than them. There's nothing wrong with a person being strong. Chapter 1899. Li Hanlin continued to explain, This is a world where the strong prey on the weak. The so-called laws are just rules set by humans standing at the top of the food chain. But isn't this also the fundamental meaning of the law of the jungle? Big fish eat small fish eat shrimps eat mud, and humans eat fish. Deer eat grass, wolves eat deer, lions eat wolves, and humans hunt and kill lions. This is unfair to begin with. But in this world, there is no creature stronger than humans. So humans set the rules of the game, and there is no reproach. This is the law. Therefore, the law of the jungle, Huron's justice. There are many unimaginable darkness in this world. Either you don't touch it, or you become the strong. Li Hanlin sighed and gently hugged his shoulder. Mr. Yun, Your mistake is that you are still too young. At such a young age, you should have had a carefree childhood, but you stepped into a world that ordinary people can't imagine. Yu Yu's world was already different from Xianxia's. He stepped into an extremely dark world, and it was this dark world that set the supreme rules of the game. He was worth hundreds of millions and sat on an inexhaustible wealth. The toy drawings he designed could be used in missile development. Once the Sky Eye project he participated in was successful, the entire Sky network would be blocked. The Hurricane Group behind him made a living from war. The smoke and war in this world were extremely cruel. But as the ruler, the Hurricane Group had already controlled the rules of life and death. For the time being, not to mention the arms transactions between the Hurricane Group and the governments and royal families of various countries, the arms sales to war-torn areas alone were enough to kill thousands of people overnight. But was this a sin? It was just a kind of capital for the strong. The most evil thing in the world was the human heart. Yu Yu took a sip of cola and bit the straw. He understood what Li Hanlin wanted to say. Li Hanlin asked him, "Mr. Yun, I just want to ask, will you regret it?" Regret? From the moment you joined the Hurricane Group for a few days, the sin on your hands can no longer be washed away. Do you regret it? Li Hanlin asked gently. On the one hand, he felt sorry for him. He was just a child, a 7-year-old child. There was no need for him to come into contact with this cruel world so early. The Gong family was famous for their fighting prowess. As the leader of the World War, the Hurricane Group was not to be underestimated. Yu Yu smiled and lifted his head. The confusion and uneasiness in his heart were swept away. I have no regrets. Why? Because that's the only way I can become a powerhouse. Even if my hands are stained with sin, I will protect Mommy and not let her come to any harm. He had had enough of cowardice, enough of being weak, enough of being bullied. She didn't want to recall the dark bits and pieces of her childhood. He would rather be stained with that sin and become the strongest person in the world. Only then would he be able to protect his mother tightly in his arms. When he was strong, his mommy wouldn't be bullied anymore. Only when he was strong could he protect the people he wanted to protect. Li Hanlin smiled knowingly and patted his head. If I had a son as strong as you, I would wake up laughing even in my dreams. If I had such a disappointing father like you, I would wake up crying in my dreams. Li Hanlin was deeply affected. Chapter 1900. Li Hanlin clutched his wounded chest and complained tearfully, Yu Yu, I'm so sad. I treated you like my own son and loved you like you were my own. But what about you? Not only did you deduct my bonus, but you also shot me down. It's so unfair. Yu Yu said coldly, Agent Li, you must always remember that this is a world where the strong prey on the weak. As your superior, it's my right to deduct your bonus. If you're so capable, why don't you deduct my bonus too? Li Hanlin suddenly fell silent and stared at him as if he wanted to say something. After staring at each other for a long time, the two of them smiled at each other and bumped fists tacitly. In fact, even though he was sharp-tongued, Yu Yu still respected the man from the bottom of his heart. In terms of status, Yun Hanlin was his superior. However, in terms of seniority, he should call him uncle. Li Hanlin had been by his side for a long time and could be considered loyal and devoted. He would not shirk his responsibility even if it meant going through hell. Director Yun, what do you plan to do next? Yu Yu closed his eyes slightly and said in a low voice, Suppress this matter as soon as possible. At the same time, send someone to see if you can find Yun Na's whereabouts. Yes. Just as he finished speaking, the doorbell rang. Li Hanlin walked over and opened the door. He saw a man in uniform standing outside the door and smiling at him. Hello, Director Li. I've prepared a copy of the information you requested. Please take a look. As he spoke, the man handed a document to him. Li Hanlin took the document and asked, Is the autopsy report out yet? The man shook his head and replied meticulously, Not yet. The corpse is highly decomposed. Even an experienced forensic doctor can't work for a long time, so the autopsy is going very slowly. All right, you can go back first. Don't mention this to anyone. Yes. Li Hanlin closed the door and handed the document to Yu Yu. Yu Yu opened the document expressionlessly. He took out a thick stack of documents and flipped through them page by page. He looked at it very seriously, going through everything in detail, no matter how big or small. As expected, Li Qin's identity was confirmed through the preliminary DNA comparison. It seemed that the corpse was indeed Li Qin. I remember that I asked Li Dongqiang to clean up his hands and feet. Yu Yu sneered, his eyes cold. Li Hanlin fell silent. He suddenly said, I'm guessing that he must have wanted to drown them in the sea. Generally speaking, once a corpse is drowned in the sea, it will decompose completely within a few months. Even if it's not completely decomposed, the school of fish will devour the corpse until there's nothing left. Li Dongqiang is not a kind person. He is ruthless and merciless. Li Hanlin thought to himself, no matter how ruthless I am not as ruthless as you. However, he didn't dare to say this out loud. Li Hanlin said casually, which one of the gangsters on East Street hasn't killed anyone before? Their days were spent licking blood from the edge of a blade. These people have no principles. They do things as long as they're paid. As for their efficiency, they can't be compared to professional killers. Even if Li Qin's corpse has been found, what about Yun Na's whereabouts? Yu Yu raised his doubts. Chapter 1901. Yu Yu disagreed. Since Li Qin has been found out, we still have to find Yun Na's whereabouts to play it safe. If she's alive, I want to see her. If she's dead, I want to see her corpse. If there's an accident, it'll be a disaster if we keep her alive. Li Hanlin nodded in agreement, but said hesitantly, the East China Sea is so big. Finding a person is like finding a needle in a haystack. I can only do my best. Yu Yu put the file on the table and pursed his lips. Indeed, finding a corpse in the sea was like finding a needle in a haystack. He pondered for a moment and said, send someone to deal with the fishermen at the East Port. They go out frequently. If they find anything, suppress the news before calling the police. Li Hanlin nodded. So far, this was probably the only way to deal with the aftermath. Yu Yu's knuckles gently knocked on the table, but there was a thick layer of hostility between his eyebrows. As for Li Dongqiang, his hands and feet are dirty. There's no point in keeping him. Understood. Leave it to me. East Street, underground gambling den. It was 2:00 in the morning. It was the time when there was a boiling cauldron of voices. Li Dongqiang was guarding the den with a cigarette in his mouth. He was like a tiger walking in his territory, patrolling around the den. Suddenly, a servant came over and whispered in his ear, Boss, someone is looking for you. Li Dongqiang frowned and glanced at him. Who's looking for you? The hooligan shook his head blankly and said vaguely, I don't know. But he said he has a big business to discuss with you. Big business? Li Dongqiang's eyes lit up when he heard this. In their line of work, the so-called big business was a code word. It meant that there was a job for him. Therefore, he threw the cigarette butt on the ground and stepped on it. He asked casually, Where is he? He's waiting in the house. Li Dongqiang ordered, Watch the den for me. I'll be back soon. As he spoke, he walked towards the house. However, when he walked to the door, his nose keenly caught a suspicious scent of blood. People like him who walked on the fringes were very sensitive to the scent of blood. As soon as he walked to the door, he noticed it. Therefore, his hand that was pushing the door open hesitated for a moment, but he still pushed it open. Just as he was about to step in, he didn't know that a strong man in black standing at the door had grabbed his collar and pushed him. Li Dongqiang staggered and fell to the ground. As soon as his hand touched the ground, he felt that the ground was sticky. He raised his head and saw a pair of empty eyes. When he saw the corpse lying on the ground, he was shocked. Holy *T. Li Dongqiang scolded and heard the door behind him close with a bang. He turned his head warily and saw two men in black guarding the door. One of them walked towards him and grabbed his hair. He raised his head and glanced at him. You are Li Dongqiang? Yes. Yes. Who the *CK are you? Li Dongqiang was so scared that he was tongue-tied. When he came to his senses, he saw that there were 7 or 8 corpses lying on the ground in the house. They were all his subordinates. These people were the ones who had been present when he dealt with Lu Jingtian. They had all been silently silenced. Get rid of him. One of them ordered. Chapter 1902. Would these men in black give him this chance though? They grabbed his hair, twisted his neck, and threw him to the ground. Then, they took out their pistols and accurately shot him twice between his eyebrows. Blood splattered everywhere. Li Dongqiang's body fell weakly to the ground as his body gradually turned cold. She received a message on her phone. Yu Yu swiped the screen to unlock it. Li Hanlin sent a short message. The trash has been cleaned up. Yu Yu emotionlessly deleted the message and replied with a smiley face. She then placed the phone under her pillow and went to sleep peacefully. Just as Yun Yeqing was waiting for the results of the autopsy, the police summoned him again 2 days later. He rushed to the station, only to receive a notice that the case had been closed. Case closed. Yun Yeqing was puzzled. What exactly happened in these 2 short days that caused him to receive a notice that the case had been closed? The officer in charge of the criminal investigation received him, listed out all the evidence, and explained everything to him. It was only now that Yun Yeqing realized that his disappointing daughter had actually incurred a huge debt outside. The suspect, Li Dongqiang, has his own territory on East Street and runs an underground gambling den. He's a notorious hoodlum and a frequent visitor to the police station. The officer spread out a few photos for Yun Yeqing to take a look. Only after the officer explained to him did he understand what had happened. Yun Na wasn't smart and wasn't good at studying. She didn't get into high school and randomly enrolled in a vocational school. However, she didn't stay in the vocational school for long before she was infected by the bad atmosphere in the school and had an unclear relationship with some bad guys in society. She had to take a break from school a few times in the middle of her studies. After she graduated, she did not work hard to find a job immediately. Instead, she continued to hang out with those delinquents. Li Dongqiang was one of them. Yun Na often hung out in bars when she was in school. Once, she met Li Dongqiang, who was still a hoodlum at that time, in a bar. Both of them had some drinks, and played together. Li Dongqiang liked to play with girls, especially those who were still in school. As for Yun Na, usually, he didn't do proper work, but his bright brain was used in this aspect. On weekends, she would often bring a few girls from her class out to play. On the surface it was just playing, but in reality? After bringing the girl to the bar, the first thing he did was to make her drink a few glasses of alcohol. Of course, the alcohol was not simple. Naturally, there were some things mixed in. These simple-minded girls had yet to enter society, and were ignorant of the ways of the world. They were not on guard at all and fell into the trap after 2 glasses of wine. At this segment, the hooligans that Yun Na had befriended tore off their disguises and began to reveal their hidden ambitions. Each of them carried a girl and returned to their room happily to enjoy themselves. Often, in the process of having fun, they would record a ****** video. When these girls woke up in the morning, they found themselves lying naked on an unfamiliar bed and were greatly shocked. Chapter 1903. These girls were all people who valued reputation and integrity. How would they dare to go head-to-head with him? Therefore, most of them did not dare to make a fuss about this matter. After the matter was settled, Li Dongqiang would give Yun Na a hefty sum of money. A few hundred to a few thousand yuan per girl. An average beauty would be a few hundred, while a superior one would be a few thousand to tens of thousands. It might not be a lot of money, but to Yun Na, who was just a student at that time, this was an indescribable amount of money. Therefore, with this sum of money, Yun Na squandered a lot. At that time, the Yun family had already gone bankrupt, and the poverty of the family caused Yun Na, who was originally accustomed to the life of a rich young lady, to be completely at a loss. Only by hanging out with Li Dongqiang would she be able to find that long-lost and numbed happiness. Later on, Yun Na mixed more and more with Li Dongqiang. In the past, she would at most play with drinks and karaoke with those people. Gradually, she learned to gamble, take drugs, and skate. There were wins and losses in gambling. Winning less and losing more. Later on, because of continuous losses, Yun Na's debt became an irreparable hole. She once asked Yun Yeqing for money, but where did he get the money at that time? He knew that Yun Na would definitely ask for money to fool around and would not give it to her even if he had it. He had saved up a sum of money to prepare for Xianxia's postgraduate entrance exam. Therefore, Yun Na started to ask Yun Xianxia for money. At first, Yun Xianxia was unwilling to give it to her. She had to spend money everywhere to take care of the sickly Yu Yu. At that time, she had just entered society and was busy subsidizing the family, helping Yun Na pay off her debts, and taking care of Yu Yu. Life was very tight. However, Yun Na threatened that she had offended some hooligans. If she did not return the money, the hooligans would come looking for her and hurt her family. Yun Xianxia had no choice but to scrape together some money and give it to her. From then on, Yun Na began to ask Yun Shishir for money frequently. Yun Shishir could not stand her exorbitant demands and moved the rented house again and again. Later on, Yun Na could no longer fill the huge loophole caused by gambling and drug addiction. Hence, she came up with the idea of Yun Shishir. She tricked Yun Shishir into the clubhouse and forced her to drink the drug. She also made an agreement with Li Dongqiang that after the deed was done, not only would her debt be forgiven, but he would also give her another 1 million yuan. Yun Na was ecstatic. However, this matter was exposed by Mu Yazha. If it weren't for him, Yun Shishir would have been in deep trouble. What happened next? Yun Yeqing had a rough idea of what had happened. Once when he returned home, he bumped into Yun Na. That time, Li Dongqiang brought people to collect the debt. Yun Na really couldn't pay up, so he took turns with her. Yun Yeqing had heard from Yun Shishir that Yun Na was addicted to drugs and gambling. He did not believe it at first, but compared to his sister, he was more inclined to believe Yun Shishir's words. It was just that he was still a little skeptical. It was only now that he truly believed it. It turned out that this daughter of his was a complete scum. She had been fooling around in society since she was in school. That was not all. She actually had designs on Shishir. Gosh, how could she do such a thing to sell her sister to a few hooligans? Chapter 1904. Yun Yeqing was in disbelief. It was only when the police took out some relevant evidence and let him listen to the relevant testimonies that he fell numbly into the chair with a face full of heartache. It was the father's fault for not teaching her well. What did he do to raise such a shameless daughter? Sitting in front of the police officer, he was extremely anxious and felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. Especially when he heard about Yun Na's crimes, he did not know where to put his face. Li Qin was also aware of this matter, but she did not say it out loud. However, the mother-daughter pair could only blame themselves for being reduced to such a state. If not for Yun Na's insatiable greed and selfishness, she would harm others for her own benefit. What about Li Qin? She was pitifully implicated by this unfilial daughter and died a wrongful death. For a moment, Yun Yeqing did not know what to feel. There was heartache, confusion, and hatred. His hatred for Yun Na's ugliness grew. This case could be considered closed at this point. Li Qin's body had been found, but Yun Na's body was probably still undiscovered. The police officer said to him, "The East China Sea is huge. I'm afraid it's like looking for a needle in a haystack if you want to search for the body thoroughly. Not to mention whether the body has been decomposed or eaten clean by the fishes. Just the cost of salvaging it is difficult to estimate. It was a coincidence that we found your wife's body. We can only say that we'll do our best. However, we can't guarantee that we'll be able to find your daughter's body." "What about the suspect?" Yun Yeqing's voice was hoarse and low. "That murderer who murdered my wife and daughter. When will your department arrest him and bring him to justice?" The police officer replied, "The suspect was killed by his fellow gang members before we sent people to arrest him. He died in a fight with his gang members." "Fellow gang members?" "Yes." The police officer explained that Li Dongqiang and the gang members had a fierce exchange of gunfire. The police officer took out some photos taken at the scene and showed them to him. Li Dongqiang, male, 35 years old. He was attacked by a group of unknown people in an underground gambling house 2 nights ago. When we arrived, the scene was a mess. Blood flowed like a river. There were heavy casualties. No one survived. "There's such a thing?" Yun Yeqing was even more shocked. "Mr. Yun, I can only ask you to restrain your grief." The police officer comforted him with a few words, then got up and left. Yun Yeqing slumped on the stool, unable to regain his senses for a long time. When Yun Shishir was still on set, she received a call from Yun Yeqing. After learning about what had happened, she was in a daze for a long time. She thought that it would take a long time for the case to be closed, but she didn't expect it to be closed so soon. After the case was closed, they needed to go through the procedures to claim the body. After settling the paperwork, Yun Yeqing brought Li Qin's body back to be cremated and buried. Yun Yeqing did not hold a dignified funeral and did not even tell anyone about this matter. He just cremated the body quietly, even though he had a lot of resentment towards Li Qin. However, a day as husband and wife meant endless devotion for the rest of their lives. Even though Li Qin had made many mistakes when she was alive, she was already dead. Many of her sins should be scattered with the wind. Chapter 1905. Yun Yeqing could not fork out the money at first. In the end, it was Yun Xianxia who paid for it. He felt guilty and grateful at the same time. Li Qin was very harsh toward Yun Xianxia when she was alive, yet this filial child was willing to let bygones be bygones and clean up the mess for him. He did not feel good about it. Yun Xianxia, however, said, "Hate is hate, but she's already dead. There's no need for me to be calculative with someone who's already dead. Dad, cherish the people in front of you. It's fine as long as you're happy." "Sure. Thank you, Dad. I've let you down." He was so regretful that he could not say anything else. "Director Yun, it's been settled." Li Hanlin's voice was deep and cryptic over the phone. The meaning behind it was self-evident. Yu nodded and gave a rare compliment. "I got it. You've managed to settle it in just 2 days. I have to say that you're quite capable." Li Hanlin was at a loss. He did not know if this little guy was praising or belittling him. As if knowing what the person on the other end was thinking, Yu calmly replied, "I'm praising you. Does this guy have a very good mind-reading ability? How can he guess what I'm thinking over the phone from so far away? Agent Li, we've worked together for so long. It's hard to describe our tacit understanding. You know me and I know you. Of course, I know what you're thinking." Yu said lightly, once again guessing what he was thinking. Li Hanlin was completely speechless. "Director Yun. Yes. You must be the reincarnation of a demon. I feel that you're not a normal creature." There was a long silence on the other end. Just as Li Hanlin was on tenterhooks, Yu's cold voice sounded from the other end. "It's almost the new year. It seems that someone doesn't want his year-end bonus." "Director Yun, don't. I was just joking with you." Before he could finish his sentence, a cold beeping sound came from the other end. Li Hanlin hugged his phone and felt like crying. Wulun Mountain Public Cemetery. It was sparsely populated. After the winter solstice, this place became unusually bleak. Early in the morning, at the first glimmer of dawn, a thin figure suddenly appeared at the gate. The thin figure was wearing a hooded black sweater. The collar of the sweater was pulled all the way to the neck. A large hat was placed on the top of the head, covering half of the person's face. It was impossible to see the person's appearance clearly. However, judging from her figure, she was a young woman of average height. The woman put her hands in her pockets and slowly walked through the door. The bodyguard stood up and raised his head to look at the newcomer, but a strange feeling arose in his heart. He had seen people sweeping the tombs, but he had never seen them before. It was still early in the morning, when the cemetery had just opened, and they were already sweeping the tombs. Therefore, he walked out of the preservation room. Just as he walked over, he wanted to ask. Before he could reach the man, he was frightened by the strange aura that the man emitted and took half a step back. This woman was clearly a living person. Why was she like a ghost? The bodyguard shook his head and decided not to poke his nose into other people's business. He returned to the preservation room to hide from the wind. The woman suddenly walked toward him. "Help me check a name." The bodyguard raised his head and saw that the woman had appeared at the window without making a sound. He was shocked. Chapter 1906. The woman's face was covered by a hat, and she wore a thick mask that covered most of her face. Only a pair of eyes that were as dark as a bottomless abyss could be seen. But were those really human eyes? These were not eyes that a living person should have. There was not a trace of life in them. They were like 2 empty holes that emitted a biting cold air from the depths. What was more frightening was that the area around her eyes was covered with hideous scars, as if she had been scratched by something sharp. Although the wound had healed, it left a permanent scar. This person. What was going on? She wrapped herself up fully, but there were scars on her face. It was very suspicious. She was neither a human nor a ghost. To be honest, after guarding the tomb for so many years, this was the first time he had been frightened by a living person. The security guard patted his chest and did not wait for him to react. "Help me check a name." The woman repeated this sentence eerily, as if she was silently chanting an ancient and terrifying spell. Her voice was low and hoarse, and there was no trace of life in it at all. The security guard's face stiffened for a while, then he took the booklet from the side and asked in a bad mood, "What's the name?" "Li Qin." "Mu Zi Li. Is Qin the Qin in piano?" The woman nodded slowly. "Yes. Aya, This name was just added not long ago. It's in the 19th row, 23rd. As soon as he finished speaking, the woman turned around without saying a word and walked towards the tomb. The security guard stared at the woman's back as she left. After a long time, he could not help but spit out a few words. What a strange person. The woman did not walk far. Her footsteps suddenly stopped, and she slowly turned around. A pair of ghostly eyes looked in his direction. The security guard was shocked into silence. He subconsciously bit his lips and smiled at her as if he was trying to please her. Tomb number 5. 19th row. 23rd row. This was a row of newly built tombstones, green and lush. The woman stopped in front of the tombstone. On the tombstone, there was a black and white photo of Li Qin, and below it were tributes and flowers. The woman slowly knelt on the ground. Her fingertips gently touched the cold photo, and her eyes narrowed slightly. Nana. Live well. You must avenge Mother. Mother hates it. Mama really hates it. I'll definitely make that bitch live a life worse than death. I'll definitely make her live in pain for the rest of her life. The mournful and desperate cries were still ringing in his ears. The woman silently stroked the cold photo over and over again. In the early morning, the frost and dew were heavy, and the photo was covered with a layer of wet marks. She gently wiped the dampness off the photo bit by bit, as if she was caressing it gently. When the woman left, the flowers in front of the tombstone were trampled to pieces. The security guard watched the figure leave and muttered to himself, more like a ghost than a ghost. He's seriously ill. At night, after Xianxia came back from the set, the family of 4 went to a Western restaurant for dinner. Wuxia purposely chose a French restaurant. When Xianxia heard that they were going to eat French food again, he was so happy that he danced with joy. I love French cuisine the most. Daddy is wise. Daddy is mighty. When Yu heard this, she looked like she was about to vomit. Chapter 1907. Whether it was French cuisine, Chinese cuisine, or Japanese cuisine, he had tried cooking all of them. Especially when it came to French cuisine, he was very good at it. It was not for any other reason but because Mommy especially loved French steak with foie gras. Hence, he learned and specialized in French cuisine for a while. He almost threw up from cooking, but Mommy still had a soft spot for French cuisine. Mommy was a godlike person. It seemed like his stupid mommy really loved French cuisine. The restaurant here has a unique style. Their signature dish is French steak. Wuxia carefully flipped through the menu page by page. As he ordered, he introduced the dishes to her. Xianxia was a little surprised. How did you know that I love French steak? Wuxia smiled but did not say anything. He silently glanced at Yu, who was sitting beside her. Yu smiled slightly. Daddy asked me what Mommy likes to eat the most, so I answered truthfully. As he said this, he said to Wuxia, Daddy, you don't know this, but Mommy is a top-notch foodie. With my cooking skills, her taste buds are very picky and she's very picky. If the restaurant Daddy recommends doesn't taste good, Mommy will definitely be disappointed. Xianxia smiled and couldn't help but scratch the bridge of his nose. Oh, you. No matter how good the chef is, he can't be as good as our Yu. Xianxia quickly flattered. Yu's cooking is the best. Yu's steak is the best in the world. Seeing through his flattery, Yu coldly retorted, Have you tried the fried steak I've made before? The corners of Wuxia's eyes twitched violently. No. Wuxia said indifferently, Xianxia, you've grown up. You've hit the nail on the head with your flattery. Xianxia was so amused that she kept laughing. Wuxia felt even more uneasy. He suddenly twisted his words and forced logic. What do you mean by flattery? I'm telling the truth. Also, I've tried Yu's steak before. Xianxia and Yu looked at each other blankly. When? Dream. Wuxia muttered. Dead silence. The 3 of them looked at Wuxia pitifully. The latter poked his little finger pitifully, looking extremely aggrieved. It's Yu's fault for not cooking for me. You little foodie. What else do you know other than eating? Yu was annoyed at him for being a disappointment and poked his little head. Wuxia lowered his little head dejectedly and looked very pitiful. He sighed and complained, I wanted to try Yu's steak, but in the end, I can only keep it as a memento in my dreams. Xianxia laughed. She felt that this guy was too funny. Wuxia was silent. Was this guy born to be a comedian? Isn't it just a steak? I'll make it for you when we get back. Yu Yu waved his hand heroically, causing Xianxia to cheer repeatedly. You too, that's enough. Stop fooling around. Didn't mommy teach you to maintain a gentleman's demeanor in public? Yu Yu and Mu Yichen tacitly sat upright and still, obedient. Have you washed your hands? Yu Yu and Xianxia shook their heads. Mu Yaja gently rubbed Mu Yichen's black hair and smiled at her. You order first. I'll bring the two guys to wash their hands. Okay. Xianxia suddenly asked, what do you want to eat? Chapter 1908. Mu Yaja got up and walked to the washroom with one hand holding the other child's hand. However, what was slightly interesting was that the two little guys were only waist-high. One was big and the other was small, so there was a very distinct height difference. Mu Yaja's 1.88 meters tall height was eye-catching. However, perhaps because he was too tall, he had to lower his posture a little and bend his knees slightly while holding the two children's hands. Therefore, the man did not look as domineering as before. Instead, he looked more gentle and meticulous as a father. He was a young father, 28 years old, but he was the father of two children. Perhaps because of his lack of experience or because he was used to being swift and decisive, he was even a little helpless when facing the two little guys. However, other than being uneasy, there was the gentleness in his father's nature that could not be hidden. Xianxia's eyes curved as she could not help but touch the diamond ring on her ring finger. Her heart was filled with sweet satisfaction. She lowered her head and browsed through the menu, hesitating as she chose the dishes. Sister Song. Here, I'm here. A woman's voice suddenly sounded from the neighboring seat. Xianxia looked up in confusion and was surprised to meet eyes with a familiar face. Xianxia, who was dressed to the nines with exquisite makeup, walked in with a sachet in her hand. The moment she saw Xianxia, who was sitting in a private room facing her, her gaze changed again and again. Why are you here? Without waiting for Xianxia to react, Xianxia took the lead to question unreasonably. Xianxia fell silent and suddenly had the urge to change restaurants. Xianxia seemed to have an appointment with someone and had arranged to meet here. However, just as she stepped through the door, the two unexpectedly bumped into each other. Xianxia was furious when she saw Xianxia. She had previously heard that Mu Yaja and Xianxia had held a grand engagement ceremony on a private island. At that time, many high-level political figures, political leaders, and presidents of various countries were present. It was especially grand and dignified. He had heard all these from Xianxia. Xianxia purposely brought up this matter in front of her to provoke her into giving up on the man completely, so that she would no longer harbor any unrealistic thoughts about him. Xianxia did not show much emotion on her face when she heard that, but her heart seemed to be in turmoil. They were actually engaged. She questioned lightly, doesn't the Mu family dislike Xianxia? How could he agree? Xianxia said, no one from the Mu family is present. Uncle Mu did it himself without using any of the Mu family's resources. However, what was unexpected was that it was done in such a grand manner. I heard that Uncle Mu racked his brains to create a dreamy beach wedding for that woman. The scene is very romantic and dreamy, just like a fairy tale. Xianxia's nonchalant words were like the sharpest icicles, piercing her heart and causing it to bleed. Xianxia was so heartbroken that she could not breathe. She could not take it lying down. Even though she knew very well that she might not be able to win Brother Mu's heart even if she did everything she could not let go calmly. She could not take it lying down. All along, she had never said that she could not get what she wanted. Chapter 1909. What right did Xianxia have to have what she could not have? With this thought in mind, Xianxia felt increasingly unbalanced. Hence, she hated Xianxia to the core. The thought of the man she loved hugging another woman and making a solemn promise to her made her hate Xianxia so much that she wished she could disappear from this world without a trace. Xianxia had advised her not to have any wishful thinking about Mu Yaja. This was not the first time she had given her such advice. However, Xianxia did not take it to heart. Hence, at this moment, when Xianxia stood before her, Xianxia trembled all over and clenched her fists tightly. She did not know how much effort it took for her to control herself from rushing forward to strangle her. Xianxia, I didn't expect to meet you here. Xianxia smiled and ignored the greetings from her friends. She took a few steps toward Xianxia and sneered. Are you very smug now? Do you think that you can live happily ever after with Brother Mu? I have to hand it to you. You've really played a big game of chess. First, you racked your brains to get close to Brother Mu and got pregnant with his child through dirty means. In the end, she would secretly hide the child by her side. When the time came, she would naturally be able to rely on her child to enjoy the glory and splendor of wealth. Do you think that you can take root in the Mu family with your lowly status? Don't think that you can rest easy just because you're engaged to Brother Mu. Let me tell you, you don't have the right to step into the Mu family. Xianxia knitted her brows in disgust and waved her hand in disgust. What a strong sour taste. Why are you so jealous of me? Xianxia, you can only be jealous of me. Don't tell me that you want to snatch your Brother Mu from me? Xianxia paused for a moment. She unrestrainedly enjoyed the look on Xianxia's face and smiled faintly. If you want to snatch him from me, you'll have to see if you have the right to do so. You. Xianxia did not expect Xianxia to reply to her with such an aggressive tone. She was so furious that her shoulders heaved up and down violently as her whole body trembled in anger. A slut will always be a slut. I really hope that Brother Mu is also here, so that he can hear your wild ambitions with his own ears. Don't keep calling me Brother Mu. I remember that according to seniority, you should call him uncle. Then, as your aunt, shouldn't you be a little more respectful? She was the mayor's daughter, yet she had such poor upbringing. She kept saying, slut, every day. If word got out, it would be very unpleasant. I heard that you graduated from a prestigious school, so you should be well-mannered. I didn't expect you to behave like an unreasonable shrew. Such merciless mockery made Xianxia lose all face. Unable to control her anger, she lost her rationality and strode up to Xianxia. She glared at her condescendingly and scolded, "You shameless slut!" As he spoke, he raised his hand and was about to slap Lin Mengya. In the next second, her hand was tightly grasped by a strong hand. "Let go! Who is it?" Xianxia turned around abruptly and sent a palm strike toward her. Chapter 19:10. Before Xianxia could see clearly who the person in front of her was, her face was already burning. It was a powerful slap to the face, but it caused everyone present to be fiercely stunned. Wuxia pulled her away. Xianxia lost her balance and staggered, falling onto the dining table and sitting on the floor. Even now, she was still in disbelief as she raised her head. However, when she finally saw who the slap came from, she was so wrong that tears instantly filled her eyes. Brother Mu? He actually slapped her. And in front of everyone. The most embarrassing thing for her was that Wuxia had slapped her in front of Xianxia. The pain on her face was not even a millionth of the pain in her heart. At that moment, Xianxia's world turned dark and gloomy. She fell to the ground, and her rather embarrassing appearance caused her to lose all her face. She held her aching cheek and tightly pursed her lips. Her trembling lips were simply unable to form a complete word. Why? This is the first time in his life that Brother Mu has been so angry with me for a lowly woman. Why? Why did he embarrass me in front of so many people? Especially Xianxia. Is he defending me? Why? Xianxia wanted to cry but had no tears. Her heart was undoubtedly shattered into pieces and she was almost suffocating. Xianxia was also stunned. She glanced at Wuxia beside her. At this moment, his handsome face was filled with hostility. His eyes, especially, were soul-stirring and sharp. I remember that I reminded you not to touch her. It was just a simple sentence, but it was frightening. Although it was a low voice, it inexplicably made people shudder. Even Xianxia was so frightened by his terrifying aura that she bit her lip nervously and did not dare to breathe loudly. What she was most afraid of was him when he was angry. That pair of eyes stared at her coldly, as if he was looking at a stranger, or as if he was staring at an abominable face. There was obvious disgust in his eyes. Does he hate me? Don't. Xianxia could no longer hold back her tears. Yu and Xiao Yichen also walked over. Their legs were not as long as Wuxia's, so when they rushed over, they happened to hear Wuxia's harsh words. When Yu heard this, he almost clapped his hands and cheered. Daddy is handsome and heroic. This bad woman popped out of nowhere. They had only left for a short while and she was already an eyesore. She didn't know what she had done to Mommy to make Daddy so angry. However, Yu Yu was comforted by the way her daddy defended her mommy. Xiao Yichen also thought to himself, Daddy is so cool. Whoever bullied mommy, he had to get back at them. Otherwise, others would think that his mommy was easy to bully. Xianxia? Xiao Yichen sneered inwardly. He hated this woman from the very beginning, especially after their encounter in Fairy Tale Valley. He hated the Song sisters for the rest of his life. The Muse and Songs had some dealings with each other, but now, Xiao Yichen pretended not to see the elders of the Song family, which infuriated the Song family. However, his daddy did not say anything, nor did he force him to address those elders. Chapter 1911. Mu Yaja did not embarrass the Songs on account of the Jiangs. If not for the fact that the Songs were related to the Muse, he did not want to embarrass them. When Xianxia saw that Mu Yaja had arrived, her heart calmed down and she felt an inexplicable sense of security. She hooked her arm around Mu Yaja's and snorted. She swept a glance at Xianxia, who was on the ground, with a smug look on her face. It was obvious that she was purposely trying to anger the other and flaunt their love in front of her. There was a saying that went, flaunting love dies quickly. However, when it was necessary, she still had to declare her sovereignty. Xianxia was so angry that her face turned ashen. She looked like she was about to vomit blood. Xiaxia's silent humiliation made her feel even more embarrassed. With the help of her friends, she slowly got up from the ground and glared at Xiaxia. However, just as she glared at her, Mu Yaja's cold gaze landed on her face like a knife. Xianxia was sad and embarrassed. She was so angry that she was at a loss for words. She looked at him with tears in her eyes, but just as she was about to speak, Mu Yaja blocked her with one sentence. I don't want to see you. These 6 words were enough to make Xianxia deeply understand what it felt like to be heartbroken. She bit her lower lip and muttered timidly, Brother Mu, do you want me to send someone to chase you away? Mu Yaja narrowed his eyes dangerously. She knew his character. He meant what he said. She gritted her teeth and weighed the pros and cons. In the end, she decided to leave with dignity. Before she left, she did not forget to glare fiercely at Xiaxia before leaving in a huff. Xiaxia muttered, Unreasonable. Mu Yaja turned his head expressionlessly. She could not help but shrink her shoulders, thinking that he was going to reprimand her for something. After all, she had ruthlessly insulted Xianxia just now. She did not know how much of it he had taken in. Unexpectedly, he smiled helplessly and said, Little thing, I didn't expect that you would finally do well for once. He could hear her eloquent and aggressive words from afar. Mu Yaja felt very gratified. Xiaxia blushed. What do you mean? What do you mean you've finally done well for once? Yu sighed and explained, Stupid mommy, Daddy means that you finally worked hard for once and didn't let anyone bully you. Xiaxia. Xiao Yichen pursed his lips and said, Where did this bad woman come from? How annoying. Isn't it enough for you to harm me? You even came to harm my mommy. Xiaxia was surprised. When did she harm you? Let's not talk about the past. Anyway, even I can see that neither of the Song sisters is good. Yu said coldly from the side. Mu Yichen, can't you tell? That woman is obviously trying to snatch Daddy from mommy. Snatch Daddy? When Xiao Yichen heard this, he immediately hugged Mu Yaja tightly and said indignantly, No way. If she wants to snatch Daddy, she'll have to get past me first. Yu said softly, There are so many women who want to snatch Daddy from mommy, but mommy is such a blockhead that she doesn't have any sense of danger. Xiao Yichen laughed when he heard this. That's because mommy has a lot of suitors too. Xiaxia suddenly fell silent. Mu Yaja held his forehead, unable to listen to this anymore. You 2 little fools, sit down obediently. Chapter 1912. Mu Yaja asked, Did she touch you? Xiaxia shook her head. No, she didn't. I was about to hit her, but you arrived just in time. If I didn't arrive in time, would you have let her hit you without retaliating? Mu Yaja wondered if Xianxia would have been able to bully her if he had not arrived in time. Says who? I was just about to retaliate when you arrived to protect me. Xiaxia said in all seriousness, not forgetting to make fun of him. Hubby, I didn't expect you to be so nimble. Could it be that you sensed that I was about to be bullied, so you rushed over on your flaming wheels to save me? As soon as she finished speaking, Yu and Xiao Yichen could not help but burst into laughter. Mu Yaja's face darkened. What are you thinking about in that little head of yours all day long? Despite his disdain, however, the corners of his mouth were still smiling. The way Xianxia addressed him as hubby earlier had warmed his heart. This little lass was really too adorable. This was especially so when she held his arm, silently declaring her sovereignty over his niece. He actually felt very warm and even a great sense of accomplishment. This gave him a greater sense of accomplishment than if he had successfully negotiated a sky-high contract. Hubby, tell me, why is there a woman who doesn't know what's good for her? What if she comes to harass me again? Mu Yaja replied nonchalantly. Hit her back. Hit her back? Xianxia fell silent. What a simple and crude answer. Xianxia mumbled. She's the mayor's daughter. Her family is full of influential people. If you ask me to hit her back, isn't it obvious that you want me to create trouble for you? Mu Yaja replied in all seriousness. Madam, you must always remember your identity. Ha! She's the mayor's daughter, and you're the young mistress of the Mu group. Your status is higher than hers. Even if you bully her, when the time comes and things get out of hand, the one who comes running to apologize is her, not you. Do you understand? Mu Yaja said indifferently. So, my husband is so powerful? Xianxia pretended to be surprised and looked at him. The expression on her face was playful and cute. Mu Yaja cast a sidelong glance at her. You just found out? Xianxia stared blankly for a moment. Then she smiled. However, there was a hint of bitterness in her eyes. She faintly said, However, what young madam? It seems, the Mu family doesn't approve of me. I really can't afford this title. Muya, on the other hand, furrowed his brows and gripped her hand tightly. It's enough that I approve of you. I have the final say in the Mu family. Your identity is also up to me to decide. You are my fiancée. In the future, you will be Mu Yaja's only wife. Who dares to say no to the person I've decided on? His domineering and exclusive style was evident. Xianxia stared at him, dumbfounded. For a moment, she did not even know how to respond. Don't worry. Before the wedding, all your worries will not appear again. Give me some time, and I'll give you an explanation. Mu Yaja's tone was solemn when he said this. Xianxia was touched and nodded. After dinner, the family originally planned to go home. However, Xianxia and Yu were full. Hence, they suggested watching a movie to digest their food. Watch a movie? Chapter 1913. As if by magic, Xianxia suddenly took out 4 movie tickets from his wallet. Xianxia took a closer look and realized that they were 4 movie tickets for The Green Apple. She fell silent. Xianxia, how many movie tickets did you buy? So many. Didn't I tell Mommy that I would reserve the entire theater for everyone to watch? Xianxia glanced at her from the corner of his eyes. You're so generous. Xianxia broke out in a cold sweat. Hence, the family headed to the theater after making up their mind. On the way there, Xianxia suddenly felt a little cold. When they left the house, it was still evening and the weather wasn't that cold. However, now that it was night time, the cold wind blew and she shivered. Although Xianxia didn't say it explicitly, Mu Yaja could tell that she was a little cold. Hence, he drove to a branded fashion store and brought Xianxia inside. When the family of 4 stepped into the store, everyone was stunned and looked in their direction. Oh my God, the man was handsome, the woman was beautiful, and the 2 little guys were even cuter and more charming than mixed-blood children. They were so bright and beautiful that everyone was envious. However, Mu Yaja ignored everyone's envious gazes. He chose, tried on, and swiped his card. His actions were as smooth as flowing water. Just like that, within a few minutes, she had a warm coat on her. After Mu Yaja swiped his card, he looked at her and was satisfied. Then, he held her hand and left the store. Xianxia was dumbfounded. Xianxia commented from the side. Not bad. Daddy has good taste. This coat suits Mommy very well. It looks beautiful and warm on her. Mu Yaja said coldly, Stop trying to bewitch me. Xianxia was silent. Nobody knew a son better than his father. How did he know that he was trying to bewitch him? Indeed. In fact, he had recently spent most of his private savings on booking a theater and treating people to a movie. He didn't have much money left, so he figured that he could curry favor with his daddy to get some pocket money to spend. You don't have any more pocket money, right? Yu mocked her from the side. It was obvious that Xiao Yichen had also noticed that Xianxia was a little cold, so he was thinking about buying her a coat. He had also taken a fancy to the coat that his father had taken a fancy to. He wanted to rush to pay the bill, but when he touched his wallet, there were only a few hundred notes left. The problem was that the coat was worth 5 figures. His face was full of resentment. He had wanted to perform well in front of his mommy. Sigh. In the end, he ended up showing off. I've spent all the pocket money Daddy gave me. Ever since Xiao Yichen was 6 years old, he had been given hundreds of thousands of yuan in pocket money every month. Most of it was invested in his management, and the rest was donated to support his mother's movie box office. The remaining few bills made him feel like he was struggling to make ends meet. Wuxia said coldly, I've already given you this month's pocket money. Since you've used it up, you'll have to wait for next month. Xiao Yichen looked depressed. Xianxia asked with concern, Xiao Yichen, you don't have any more pocket money? Yes. Xiao Yichen nodded and looked at her expectantly. As expected, Xianxia dug into her own pocket. Daddy won't give you any, but Mommy will. Humph. Who asked your daddy to be so stingy? That's right. Mommy is still the most generous. Xiao Yichen said with a smile. Chapter 1914. The latter glared at him. However, Xiao Yichen knew that he had Xianxia to back him up, so he glared back at him. Wow. This kid has grown up. In the past, whenever he glared at him, he would shrink back. Here you go. Remember to save some money. Xiao Yichen turned around and saw Xianxia handing him a few hundred yuan notes with a smile. Little Yichen's heart turned cold at once. Yu snickered at the side. Mommy and Daddy were different. Daddy was rich and generous. He gave them each a few 100,000 yuan as pocket money every month. However, Mommy's concept of pocket money was more like that of an ordinary family. How much money could a 7- or 8-year-old spend? A few hundred yuan was already impressive. Looking at Xiao Yichen's disheartened expression, Yu covered her mouth and snickered at his misfortune. The weather in the north was very cold at night. However, it was different from the south. The weather in the south was humid and cold. In the north, the weather at night was thicker so that it was not considered cold. The family of 4 sat in the cinema. Xianxia had already watched the movie once, but the 2 little guys had not. Children of 6 or 7 years old had no interest in romance movies. However, because the female lead of the movie was their mommy, the 2 little guys watched it with great interest. Xianxia, on the other hand, was on tenterhooks. After all, the filming of this movie had caused quite a stir. As expected, Wuxia's expression was gloomy throughout the movie. When there were some hugging scenes, his expression became even gloomier, not to mention the intimate kissing scenes. Especially when Yin Xiaochuan kissed Yin Dongyu forcefully. Xianxia carefully glanced at Wuxia. Her expression was so gloomy that ink was about to drip out of it. How torturous! With a 1,000-year-old iceberg sitting next to him, no matter how thick he wrapped himself, it would be useless. Little Yichen, who was standing at the side, said in a shocking manner, Yu, don't you think Mommy and the male lead are a good match? As soon as he said this, Wuxia's eyes darkened. He couldn't help but reach out and pinch Xiao Yichen's ear, causing him to grimace in pain. Shut up. Watch your movie and don't talk too much. Being reprimanded for no reason, little Yichen covered his red and painful ears with his hands. He wanted to cry but had no tears. He complained to Yu, Daddy is so violent. How did I offend him? You want to bully me like this? Serves you right. Yu was expressionless and did not sympathize with him at all. Who asked you to say that Mommy is compatible with another man in front of Daddy? Xiao Yichen was speechless. The little guy immediately turned around and said, Daddy, you're the most handsome. You and Mommy are the most compatible. His teasing words made the people sitting around look over. Looking at the adorable little guy, everyone laughed good-naturedly. However, some people couldn't help but notice Xianxia, who was sitting at the side and watching the movie. One of the girls whispered, Hey, look at the woman behind you. She looks so much like the female lead in the movie. Her boyfriend immediately turned around and stared at Xianxia. He was extremely surprised. Yes, they look alike. Xianxia's heart skipped a beat. Oh no, I think I've been recognized. Chapter 1915. Yu Yu was stunned for a moment, but Xianxia replied calmly, "How is that possible? I'm already a mother of two." Her unusual calmness confused the girl. Xianxia continued, "My colleague said that Xianxia and I look a lot alike, so I came over to watch her movie." "There's such a coincidence?" the man asked in surprise. Xianxia's calm reply dispelled their suspicions. Thus, they turned around to continue watching the movie. As they watched, they exclaimed, "They really look alike." Xianxia tilted her head and glanced at Wuxia. She saw him staring at the movie screen. In the dark, his eyes were deep and bright. They were as beautiful as top-grade jade, and she couldn't help but be mesmerized by them. Wuxia seemed to sense her peeking at him. He slowly turned his face and glanced at her. Raising his eyebrows, he asked, "What's wrong? You don't like watching this movie, do you?" Xianxia muttered. "What do you think?" Wuxia asked in amusement. "No man would like his woman to kiss another man." "This is acting. It's work." "Not even work," Wuxia said sourly. "You even kissed so passionately. Your acting skills are really good." Xianxia was confused. She didn't know if his comment was positive or negative. She felt that he didn't seem to like the movie. However, if she thought about it carefully and put herself in his shoes, it was understandable that he didn't like it. After all, he didn't like her to be intimate with other men. If Wuxia kissed another woman because of work, she wouldn't be able to tolerate it either. Thus, she made up her mind and said, "Okay. I won't do any kissing scenes in the future." Wuxia was speechless. She held his arm and promised in a low voice, "Even if it's for work, I won't kiss another man." "Not bad, you have such awareness." "Very good." Wuxia suddenly grabbed her shoulders and leaned in to give her a light peck on the lips. His gaze fell on her tender and supple lips as he said in a deep voice, "This place belongs to me. No one else is qualified to touch it." "Hey, restrain yourself. We're in public now. Can you keep a low profile?" Xianxia pushed him away, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "I'm kissing my wife. Why should I care about keeping a low profile?" Wuxia said confidently. Xianxia was getting angrier. She was laughing in her heart, but she pretended to be angry and stuffed his mouth full of popcorn. Yu Yu and Xianxia sat at the side and stared intently at the screen. They had a tacit understanding that the two of them were like two huge light bulbs that were shining brightly. By the time they finished watching the movie, it was already past 9 in the evening. When it was over, people walked out and couldn't stop praising the movie. Most of them were boyfriends who accompanied their girlfriends to watch the movie. Girls liked romantic movies, especially romantic ones like this. Although most of them came for Xianxia, after watching the movie, they were all attracted to Xianxia's performance. "That Xiaochuan acted so well. I cried when I saw the ending." The female lead's eyes were filled with drama. Her acting skills are very good. Chapter 1916. I'll definitely watch her movies in the future. Her looks and acting skills are worth looking forward to. There were all sorts of praises and so on. Xianxia listened quietly and felt encouraged. Wuxia held her hand and the four of them walked out of the cinema. On the way to the parking lot, they took a stroll along the river. The night view was the most beautiful at this time of the year. Yu Yu and Xianxia were playing with each other as they walked in front. Xianxia and Wuxia walked at the back. Looking at the two little guys playing with each other, she suddenly felt very satisfied. The happiest moment in the world was this moment. In fact, she was a more traditional girl. She did not yearn for glory and wealth, but she yearned for a peaceful life. She did not have to worry about food and clothing. To have a warm family, a loving husband, and two adorable Xiaobao twins, Yu Yu and Xianxia, was already a great fortune for her. She was quite content with the present situation, she thought without pretension. She did not like to go out and play. Like those young girls, she did not like to go to bars, dance clubs, or nightclubs. She did not like noisy and extravagant places. When she was free, she liked to hold her beloved man's arm and take a stroll quietly. Her days were leisurely. Perhaps, she did not live up to expectations. But it was true that she was very satisfied with such a life. God was good to her, and she knew how to cherish what she had. The world is unpredictable and capricious. You can never predict which will come first, tomorrow or an accident. So she cherished what she had. That's great. Xianxia suddenly sighed. It's really good to have such a peaceful life. Where did you get all these sighs from? Wuxia laughed. I'm just expressing my feelings. Xianxia smiled contentedly. After I film a few more movies, I'm planning to retire. I don't need a lot of money, as long as I have enough to spend. I don't like a busy life. I prefer this peaceful life. Didn't I say that you don't need to act anymore? I can afford to raise you. Of course I know you can afford to raise me. You're so rich. Not to mention me, even if there were thousands of me, it wouldn't be a problem for you to raise me. Wuxia was puzzled. Then why do you insist on making movies? It's just a dream. A person without dreams was no different from a salted fish. I just want to realize my value. Little fool. The two of them talked and laughed. When they arrived at the parking lot, Xianxia called the two noisy little guys to go home. After coaxing the two little guys to bed, Xianxia also washed up and went to bed. A certain energetic man wanted her again. Xianxia pushed him away. It's getting late. Let's sleep. I want it. With just 2 words, his ambition was as clear as day. Xianxia ignores him. It's already 11 o'clock. You have to get up early to work tomorrow. It's okay, I have good stamina. Xianxia. You can't do it even if you have good stamina. I'll wake up earlier than you tomorrow. I have to rush to work. Just for a while. The man's ambition was hard to hide. He pressed his body against hers and even knew how to bargain with her. Xianxia blushed and mumbled, I'm on my period these 2 days. It's not convenient. Period. The man raised his eyebrows suspiciously, as if he didn't believe her. Really? Chapter 1917. Wuxia, on the other hand, looked a little frustrated and disappointed. Why was her period here? He had worked so hard, but she did not have any reaction at all. Did she not know what his ambition was? Xianxia would take birth control pills behind his back. How could she fall for it so easily? Now that her career was on the rise, it was not suitable for her to have another child. Moreover, she already had 2 cute little guys by her side. If she had another child, wouldn't it be a mess? Xianxia thought that it was enough to have Xiao Yichen and Yu Yu, these 2 clowns. She did not want a 3rd child. However, Wuxia did not think so. He was still hoping that she would give him another little princess. Therefore, in a certain aspect, he was especially proactive. However, Xianxia was going to be tortured by him. She did not know where this man got his energy from. After a night of passion, he could still go to work energetically the next day, but she could not. If he continued like this, she would be exhausted. Xianxia did not want to talk to him anymore. She pulled the blanket over herself, wrapped it around her, and closed her eyes to sleep. Wuxia could only give up when she was so shameless. There was no hurry. There was still a long way to go. He lay down obediently and hugged her. Then they fell asleep together. Over the past few days, the box office sales had been good news. Soon, it broke the 2 billion mark. Lin Fengtian and a few investors were overjoyed and held a huge celebration party. At the premiere, a few of the main cast members said that if the box office sales could break the 2 billion mark, each of them would fulfill a small wish of their fans. However, now that the box office sales had broken the expected target, it was time to fulfill the bold words that they had said at the beginning. On the night that the box office sales broke the 2 billion mark, Xianxia, who had been silent for a long time, was the first to release an erotic photo. Back then, at the premiere, under the collective encouragement of his fans, he promised that if the box office exceeded 2 billion, he would contribute a nude photo. When the fans heard this, it was as if they had been injected with chicken blood. Watching the movie once was not enough, they had to watch it 4 or 5 times. Then, they raised their heads and looked forward to the box office breaking the 2 billion mark. Xianxia kept his promise and posted a nude photo of the woman. The so-called nude photo was at best half naked. He was lying in the bathtub and took a half-body selfie. In the photo, the messy forehead hair, the unruly eyes, and the fine and sexy body made the fans drool. Many fans were moved to tears, not because of Xianxia's promise, but because he had finally updated his Weibo after being silent for so long. This made all the hardcore fans cheer. Xianxia, as long as you're well, that's enough. Heart. Xianxia, we'll love you forever. I heard that you're sick. I hope you can take good care of yourself. Xianxia, we will always be your strongest backing. I hope you have a good rest. In the blink of an eye, this Weibo post attracted hundreds of thousands of likes and quickly reached hundreds of thousands of reposts. It could be seen that even if Gu Xingzi was banned, his influence was still not to be underestimated. Xianxia promised that if the box office sales broke the 2 billion mark, she would personally remove her makeup on the show and show her bare face.